Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well, thank you for being here and joining us this evening. For the record, it is Tuesday, June 27th. It's 5 minutes after 6. We'll start with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Here, sorry.
Councilmember Milo.
Here.
Councilmember Palmer.
Here.
Councilmember Borton.
Here.
Councilmember Byrd.
Here.
Mayor DeVeerd.
Here.
I know that Councilmember Little Roberts is in the building. She's not at her seat at the moment.
Thank you. Item 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all stand and join us in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 is our community invocation. Tonight will be led by Larry Woodard with 10 Mile Christian Church. If you will all join us in the community invocation or take this as an opportunity for a moment of reflection. Larry, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Last month, I prayed not only for our city, but for the acrimony in our nation, that would tone down. But since then, we've had the attempted killing of the congressman, and I just, again, I'm concerned with the attitudes that we find in our nation today. But I'll pray for you folks, because I know you. Our dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight with heavy hearts. We have a wonderful city and we have great leaders, but around us there are signs of trouble. The triple homicide in an adjacent city is so troubling. Tonight I pray that as these leaders make decisions concerning Meridian, that we keep in mind that our city could be the next on the national news. Tonight I pray for each councilman or councilwoman and that you will give them clear minds as they make decisions that will affect Meridian for years to come. I also pray for our mayor, who is the face of our town and who guides the day-to-day operations of the city staff. This council and Mayor Tammy have to live and breathe city issues. I pray for their families and spouses who share the burden of issues around the dinner table many nights a week. I know from experience you simply cannot turn off issues when you leave work. Summer is in full swing, and repairs to homes and roads that were damaged by our severe winter are ongoing. Keep the workmen throughout our city safe. Dairy Days is over, and we have not forgotten the early settlers who made Meridian a dairy and fruit hub. We applaud our youth who have sales of their products at the City Hall Plaza on weekends. Encouraging them to stretch a bit and quit looking at cell phones will pay dividends later in life for them. We thank you for youth leaders and parents who encourage our young people. This Friday, I have the honor to conduct services for a retired Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps who's lived in Meridian for over 40 years. After 2 tours in Vietnam and 30 years in the Corps, he picked Meridian with its 6,000 citizens as a place to retire. George Early represents so many of our citizens who come to Meridian for the quality of life it offers. We thank you that our community is full of retired military families. Lastly, I pray for safety for our citizens, but especially for our fire, police, and other emergency personnel. I also pray for the city planners, clerks, and other city employees that keep this city humming. Lord, we thank you for the blessings you have given to us and for this and earlier councils who made solid decisions over the years. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Larry.
You bet.
Item number 4 is adoption of the agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I'm going to take a senior moment. With the permission of the rest of the council, I got a little letter here I want to read. We had a young lady last Thursday that got honored with a very high honor, and very deservingly so, and I'll try to get through the reading of it. Last week, Mayor Tammy received the highest award given to a city official from the Association of Vital Cities. She was recognized with the Harold Hearst Award, which is given annually to a city official who demonstrates exemplary performance in city government and who has contributed to the accomplishment of this Association of Vital Cities. Tammy received this award for all she has done for Meridian and the Association of Vital Cities. Let me highlight a few things Tammy has done in Meridian as an active volunteer in the community for more than 2 decades. An elected official. She led the campaign to bring Boys and Girls Club to Meridian, found the Friends of Meridian Parks as an organization, brought the March for Parks to Meridian in 1997, and served as a charter member and first president of the Meridian Parks and Recreation Commission. Tammy served 2 years on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and was elected to the Meridian City Council in 1999 and served on the council for 4 years with you as council president. Tammy has been a leader in youth engagement in city government, and all you have to do is look at the success of the Meridian's Youth Advisory Council, which gives teens a voice in city government. It is one of the most successful youth councils in the nations. She has instituted several successful health programs, including the Meridian Youth Farmers Market and Mayor Tammy's Walking Club. Tammy has been very engaged in AIC, served several years on the board of directors as president in 2014-15, where she led the search for a new executive director on the legislative committee on chair of the AIC Drug Task Force. Join me in congratulating Mayor Tammy DeVeard on her outstanding legacy and public service to the citizens of Meridian and the state of Idaho. And I could go on for another 2 hours, but I won't. And this is an honor that this young lady deserves very much.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Borton.
Who told you you could do that?
Mr. Borton can do the agenda.
Sir. Madam Mayor.
Mr. Borton.
On the agenda, ordinance 11A is proposed ordinance 17-1735. There are a number of items that the applicant has either requested to withdraw or continue. Those will remain on the agenda, but will be addressed when they come to that stage. So with that ordinance addition, I would move that we adopt the agenda as published.
Mr. Borton, can we add the discussion that on the strategic plan to the end of our agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Mr.
Item 12, 13, we'll say item 12. We will add a continued discussion on the strategic plan.
And second agree?
Yes.
Okay. Council, the motion is to adopt the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5 is future meeting topics. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We had a few signups this evening. The first is Susan Carnes. Under the description is the Meridian Southern Rim Coalition.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening and congratulations, Mayor.
Thank you.
My name is Susan Carnes. I live at 5556 South Graphite Way. Tonight, I wish to introduce you to the Meridian Southern Rim Coalition, a group dedicated to the interests of South Meridian's scenic Southern Rim area, which boasts one of the Treasure Valley's most prized assets, an astoundingly beautiful, unobstructed view of the Boise Range, and in many instances, the Owyhees as well, amid peaceful rural ambiance. Our area, as you well know, is exploding with development thanks to the beauty of the rim views, vast swaths of undeveloped land, and Meridian's reputation as a livable city. Yet many of our neighbors live in brand-new developments with HOAs still under management by their developer, or they reside on rural acreage. In essence, many have no effective neighborhood voice, and yet they strongly desire that their opinions and voices be heard as the city embarks on one of its most important tasks, overseeing and managing thoughtful, appropriate, and visionary development of the Southern Rim. Our group is not opposed to development or annexation. Instead, we share the city's concerns about balanced and diversified housing, preserving neighborhood identities, addressing natural transitions between developments, and embracing the beauty of the Treasure Valley. In other words, we strongly support thoughtful, managed growth that benefits the city, developers, and homeowners alike for generations to come. Development is inevitable, and we welcome growth that recognizes our area's amenities and attributes. Yet we believe there are impending development applications that deserve our scrutiny and demand our involvement. Our goal, to collaborate with developers so we may support their applications before P&Z and the council. On a broader scale, as stakeholders in the Southern Rim, we recognize the need for a master plan, a vision that embraces and augments the Rim's assets. We'd like to be an effective partner with other stakeholders to develop, refine, and define the vision for a legacy the entire city can celebrate. Inspired by the city's own examples of strategic planning and thoughtful discussions and debates regarding development in high-potential corridors, the North Rim, Destination Downtown, 10-Mile Interchange are good examples, the coalition aims to serve as a thoughtful partner with developers, city planners, and the council. We plan to provide solutions, not to create obstacles. Therefore, in the spirit of collaboration and as an action item to serve as a catalyst for a Southern Rim vision plan, we have drafted a special amendment to the city's comprehensive plan and submitted it to the community development staff. Additionally, we have invited the mayor and each council member to meet with us to discuss the proposed amendment and how the coalition might effectively serve the mutual interests of the city and residents along the Southern Rim. We've had the honor of meeting with Councilman Kavanagh and have a meeting scheduled with the mayor on July 12th, and we hope to meet with each of you for a productive exchange of ideas and inspiration.
Thank you so much, Susan. This is an informational point,
Right.
so we certainly look forward to the conversation. I know former councils have had a desire to have neighborhood associations to provide for that citizen engagement and feedback. So we look forward to the conversations and seeing your proposal.
Okay. I will leave the clerk with a copy of my comments as well as an overview of our mission statement and objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner.
Well, I know that we don't make any decisions in this. We do, at least after becoming aware, can make a request. And I would like to make a request that in a future council meeting that we hear about their presented amendment item to staff. I assume staff has a copy of it and they'll be able to provide us a response and some feedback. So obviously not tonight, but at a future council meeting, it'd be ideal to hear about that.
Certainly, Councilman Byrd and I, when we meet on the agenda, we'll get that set and certainly talk with our community development department on how best to move forward and what meets the timelines for this group as well. So thank you.
Madam Mayor, the other two signups, Kathy Baumgartner and Andrea, were both a part of the Southern Rim Coalition as well.
Okay. Well, thank you again for joining us. Okay, item 6 is our consent agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as published and for the mayor to sign, the clerk to attest.
Second for discussion.
Okay, I have a motion and
Yeah,
a second.
Apologize for not jumping in. Item H, 6H, if we could pull that off. I didn't see it in the packet, so just
Did you pull that off?
if we could pull 6H off.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I will pull my motion, and I had wondered if anybody wanted to pull that off, in fact, and I would move that we pull item H off for discussion under item 7. And with that, I move we approve the consent agenda excluding item H, and for the mayor to sign, the clerk to attest.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes. Item 7H. H was moved from the consent agenda, and I'll turn this over to Mr. Nick.
Thank you, Madam Madam Members of the Council. These two items, annually, Finance requires that we bring any additional changes or amendments to our budget in the month of June. These two are for a specific, one for a specific contract, the professional services one is for the specific contract we've approved with Lobby Idaho, and the second one, legal services, are for services that have been rendered. We have a line item for this in our budget annually. This is for services that both have been rendered, as well as those that are still pending, as well as sort of an estimate on the costs that may be incurred for the rest of the calendar or fiscal year they may need. And predominantly, this is related to the courthouse case that's ongoing.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Kefner.
question for Bill. 1 and 2 are predominantly for the courthouse, or 1 or 2 are predominantly for the courthouse?
One is all for the courthouse.
Okay.
And 2 is predominantly for the courthouse. We did have a couple of other outside legal expenses during the course of the year, but the bulk of the outside legal expenses are for the courthouse case.
Okay. Any further questions?
The mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
seeing none, I move we approve the legal budget amendments.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Item 8A is a community presentation. We had the representatives from Gowan Thunder Air Show come and present to us earlier, a couple of months ago. And we did get some information. There was interest from council on at least hearing what some of the ways that we could support the Gowan Thunder Air Show might be. And so I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
My name is Jerry Venningen.
Jerry, thank you for joining us.
I'm a retired lieutenant colonel with the Idaho Air Guard, also a retired real estate broker, so I've talked to some of you before.
Well, thank you for your service in the
You're
military,
welcome.
for
I
sure.
also regret the fact that I volunteered to be the chairman of the sponsorship committee for the Idaho Gowan Thunder Air Show, because my father, when I went into the Air Force, told me two things: never sign your name where they could trace it back to you, and never volunteer for anything. And I broke that rule. However, I'm Quite proud to come here and talk to you about the Gowan Thunder Air Show. Just in a synopsis, we are going to have the first air show at Gowan Field in 21 years. It's going to be the largest event in the state of Idaho in 2017, I'm sure. We're estimating 150 to 175,000 people to attend over the two-day period of October 14 and 15, which are a Saturday and Sunday. We also are going to have a practice day on the 13th, which is Friday, for the two major air show components, which are the Thunderbirds and the Canadian Snowbird teams. Interestingly enough, this is the first time in the history of air shows in the United States that two of the three national air show components are going to be flying at the same place at the same time, which makes this even a more significant event for the state of Idaho and for the Treasure Valley. These things don't come free, and therefore we are out soliciting sponsorship funds from anybody and everybody we can think of. And we would like the city of Meridian to endorse this air show at the $5,000 level. We have had discussions with the staff on what that would get the city of Meridian, and in my opinion, besides major support for our National Guard, both the Air and Idaho Army National Guard will be heavily involved in this air show. We have also offered to have you be the exclusive sponsor of one of the acrobatic acts that actually is from here in the valley. And we also are having on Friday a high school STEM program, which is sponsored by Boise State University. I'm sure you all know what STEM stands for. It's, no, I gotta say it. That's right, science, technology, engineering, and math. And it's put on by Boise State, and we open it up to the general schools of the Treasure Valley. Two charter schools from Meridian did express interest and have committed to over 100 kids going to the STEM project, which is on Friday in the C-130 hangar, our major hangar. And it will be a competition between different schools in the valley, bringing their STEM projects forward and being judged by judges from Boise State. And we have committed to pay for the transportation of the kids from the two charter schools stemming from Meridian, along with this $5,000 sponsorship. That, in a nutshell, is what we were asking and offering for sponsorship for this air show.
Thank you. Council, do you have questions? Earlier, when we brought the budget amendment in for State of the City funds, $1,500 was to be contributed to the Gowan Thunder Air Show. So I guess we would be looking to close the gap of $3,500 to help with our students and support the STEM activities and transportation.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I think it's very little to ask when we have, I would imagine we have at least 2,000 Air Guard or Army National Guard full-time or part-time employees that live within our city. This is something that Gowan Field has always been a great economic development tool for the valley. It's the whole Treasure Valley from Ogden to Mountain Home. So I would have no problem in adding another $3,500 to the $1,500 that we've already programmed.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum.
so I have a question for you. I understand you are the sponsorship chairperson, so you may not have the answer to this question that I'm going to ask. I'm curious how the students that are going to be able to participate in the STEM program over there, the 100 students, how are they selected?
And this is my understanding, Steve Swanson, who is a retired astronaut that runs the STEM program at Boise State University, sent out an open invitation to all the public and private schools in the Treasure Valley to participate in this. And the two schools that responded to that for Meridian, I have the names of the schools if you'd like them. The Barbara Morgan STEM Academy with 80 students, and one of the charter high schools with 20 students. I don't have the exact name of the other charter school.
So all of the schools in Meridian were invited?
We're invited, yes.
Thank you. We on my school?
Madam Mayor, if that was a motion Mr. Byrd made,
Oh, yeah.
I would second the motion.
Thank you. It was a motion.
Well, what's your motion?
To add $3,500 to the $1,500 that's already to get the $5,000 sponsorship.
And the second agrees
Yes.
that that's what you were seconding?
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor, just a comment.
Mr. Kavner?
I appreciate the economic driver that this event's going to be for the valley as a whole. And I have no issues with contributing $1,500 from your State of the City funds to this. I struggle to see the direct benefit to Meridian City residents. It's been $3,500 tax dollars on sponsoring what I'm sure is going to be an amazing exhibit. I just don't see it as a prudent use of our tax dollars. So I'll be opposing this for those reasons.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Palmer?
Madam Mayor, I echo Councilman Cavanagh and add that there are countless incredibly worthy causes, but we don't have the money. We are in the budget process right now, and there are numerous things that are currently not planned to be funded without an increase to taxes. And so if we were to sponsor this or any number of other things, that would also come from an increase in property taxes, which I feel wouldn't quite be our role and our responsibility. So I'm opposed as well.
Any other discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Lowell Roberts?
how long did you say it had been since a show like this has been, and there hasn't been a show like this, but since we've had an air show
Our
here?
last air show that involved a national demonstration team was 21 years ago.
It was
Thank you.
good.
We feel like we've neglected our responsibility to include the community in what exactly the Idaho Air Guard and the Idaho Army Guard has done in the past because of our constant commitment to actually going and fighting for our country. We've had a lull, and we feel like it's time that we bring something back to the community.
Thank you. Follow up? I would like to see us support this. I think that's, having just spent a day out at Gowan about 2 months ago and not even realizing what all goes on out there, I think this is an amazing opportunity for our community and especially our kids to see these may be career paths that these students take. And so I just think it's an amazing opportunity to have our students and our children experience this that you can't get on an everyday basis.
Now, I would echo the sentiments of Councilwoman Lowell Roberts and the support of this extraordinary opportunity we have to show our community's support of our military. I can tell you in a number of different ways, not just the 200 guardsmen and women that are employed out there, but the number of our citizens that go out there and spend their evenings and weekends giving back to our country through their Guard participation. But the Idaho National Guard has come and worked with our emergency responders on a number of occasions in planning for critical response in a number of different ways. The Gowan Field gives to our community on a regular basis, and this is a small token to show our appreciation for the sponsorship, but also to encourage our youth to know more about Gowan Field, to know about the STEM activities that we hope that they seek as a career, and certainly that they form an interest and alliance to our state in this area to come back and serve either in the military or in our communities as well. So we appreciate this opportunity, and we hope that you go back with our thanks for the continued service of what Gowan Field represents. If there's no further discussion,
Madam Mayor, just a question.
Mr. Kavner.
What department budget is, if this were to pass, what department budget is the funds coming out of?
You can take it out of the mayor's.
I guess I would ask Robert because I did ask that myself. And we would come back with a budget amendment
Yeah,
next
Madam Mayor,
week.
members of council, it'd be a fund balance amendment.
Okay.
It's not extra.
Any further discussion? Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh?
No.
Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
No.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Borton?
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd?
Aye.
The ayes have it. We appreciate you joining us tonight and
being here.
look forward. Okay, item 9A is a final plat for H 2017-0079. The applicant requests to withdraw the application as the plat has expired. Staff, do you have any further comment on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say staff.
Madam Mayor.
Apologize about that.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Byrd.
Do we need Mr. Neri, do we need a motion to take this off, see now the applicant has withdrawn it?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Byrd, what you would do is simply make a motion to approve the applicant's request to withdraw.
Madam Mayor,
Mr.
I
Byrd.
move that we approve the applicant's request to withdraw this application.
I have a motion and a second to approve the request to withdraw this application on item 9A. Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh?
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer? Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Borton?
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd?
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Item 9B is a public hearing for H 2017-0057. Council, this application needs to be continued to July 5th as the site was not properly posted. So we can't hear any information on this until that has been appropriately posted.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we
Continue.
continue H 2017-0057 to July 5th, 2017, because site was not posted properly.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Neri, do I need to open this public hearing even though it was not properly posted?
No, ma'am, you don't need to open it.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh?
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Borton?
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd?
Aye.
All ayes. I guess I have a question for staff, seeing that the reason that the items being continued tonight are because of improper posting. Is there a problem here?
Madam Mayor, there was a confusion on two of the items, Preakness and, let's see here.
I don't even see.
Bannock Ridge. We had tried to get them on an earlier hearing date, and the notice was done, but apparently they received a notice that the hearing wasn't until the 5th mistakenly. So therefore, they did not post the site in adequate time prior to the meeting on tonight.
So that was the issue with 2 of those. And then the other did not post their site correctly within the time frame allowed, or required, I should say.
So I'm curious as to, anyone here to testify on any of these items, items 9, B, C, or D, and F?
That's ridiculous.
Because these can't be heard because of the improper posting. We apologize if you're here to testify on any of these items, and we can, these all are going to be continued to July 5th, which is next Wednesday. If you're not able to join us, if you can share your remarks in writing. And again, for our apologies, but we cannot even hear these items until they're properly noticed. So our apologies. Okay, so item 9C is the request to continue because the error in site posting on H 2017-0055. I'll need a motion to continue.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum,
I move that we continue H 2017-0055 to July 5th due to improper posting.
Second?
a motion and a second to continue item 9C to July 5th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes. Item 9D is also requested to continue due to an error in the site posting documents for H 2017-0048. I would entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we continue H 2017-0048 to July 5th, 2017, due to error in posting in the site sent to staff.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue item 9D to July 5th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. 9E is a public hearing for H 2017-0064. I will open this public hearing with staff comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The applications before you tonight are a request for a development agreement modification, a preliminary plat, and a planned unit development. This site consists of 35.64 acres of land. It's zoned R15 and located at the southwest corner of North Meridian Road and West Chinon Boulevard. This property was annexed back in 2013, and the existing development agreement for Paramount subdivision was modified to include this property. Since that time, the property has been rezoned to R15. The development agreement was modified again to update the conceptual development plan, and a couple of preliminary plats have been approved. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation is mixed-use community, 26 acres of the site, and medium-density residential, 15 acres of the site. A development agreement modification is requested to modify the conceptual development plan to accommodate the proposed development. The concept plan is as shown and proposes a mix of attached and detached homes for age-qualified 55 and older housing in a gated community. Some will be independent living rental units with services provided by the adjoining Veranda Assisted Living Facility to the west. A preliminary plat is proposed that consists of 196 building lots and 24 common lots on 35.64 acres of land in the R15 zoning district. The subdivision is proposed to develop in 2 phases. One access is proposed via North Fox Run Way, and one is proposed via West Director Street, both collector streets. Gates are proposed at the entries to the development, and private streets are proposed for internal access within the development. Another access via Director is proposed to the common lot where a community pool is proposed, and that is this arrow, if you can see here, right there. This access does require council approval of a waiver per UDC 11-3A3 which restricts access to collector streets. Direct access via Chinden and Meridian Road is not proposed and is prohibited. The plat depicts right-of-way along Chinden and Meridian Road for future dedication for the widening of these streets. A minimum 35-foot wide street buffer is required along Chinden and Meridian Road, both designated as entryway corridors, after right-of-way is dedicated for widening of the adjacent streets. A 20-foot wide buffer is required along Fox Run, a collector street. A minimum of 10% qualified open space and 2 site amenities are required to be provided for this development. The applicant is proposing 20.9% or 7.46 acres of land of qualified open space, which is twice the required amount, and amenities consisting of a clubhouse, swimming pool, and outdoor activity complex in the center of the development, and segments of the city's multi-use pathway system along Chinden and Meridian Road. A pathway along Director Street has been constructed with a previous phase of Paramount. A future community swimming pool is also proposed at the southwest corner of the development. 9 conceptual building elevations were submitted, as shown, for homes within this development. 6 different styles and types of homes are proposed, consisting of cottages with front and alley access garages, quad cottages with alley access garages, traditional with alley access garages, patio homes with front access garages, and traditional lots with alley access garages. All attached structures are required to comply with the design standards listed in the Architectural Standards Manual. A plaid unit development is requested, which allows for innovative design that creates visually pleasing and cohesive patterns of development, and creates functionally integrated development that allows for a more efficient and cost-effective provision of public services. Deviations from the underlying district requirements may be approved through this type of application. As part of the PUD, a variety of housing types are proposed, as previously mentioned. Buildings are clustered with homes fronting on mews, and a surplus of common area and site amenities are provided. Deviations from code that are requested to achieve the proposed design consist of the following: the allowance of an alley that is not fully visible from a public street, and that is the one right here at the top of the plan here in gray. Blocks that exceed the maximum block face length allowed in residential districts, and reductions in front, garage, and street side building setbacks. The commission did recommend approval of these applications. John Wardle, the applicant's representative, testified in favor. No one testified in opposition. Joanne Smith Curtis commented on the application, and written testimony was received from Mike Wardle, the applicant's representative. Key issues at the hearing, Ms. Smith Curtis was of the opinion the proposed density is too high and was concerned about traffic and parking generated by the proposed development. Key issues of discussion by the commission was the parking for the overall development and private streets for access within the development. Commission did change staff recommendation. They approved a modification to conditions number 1.2.3A, 1.2.3D, and 1.2.3E as requested by the applicant. The only outstanding issue for council tonight is the applicant's request for a council waiver for the access to the common area for the clubhouse and pool via Director Street, the collector street. The written testimony since the commission hearing has been received from Mike Wardle, the applicant's representative. He is in agreement with the revised commission recommendation to council. Staff will stand for any questions.
Council, any questions for staff at this time? Okay. Would the applicant like to make comment?
Madam Mayor, council members, Mike Wardle, Brighton Corporation, 12601 West Explorer Drive in Boise. First, congratulations.
Thank you.
On the honor. I guess I've been a witness to all of that. I've been back here in the community for 24 years and have seen a lot of those good things happen, so thank you.
Thank you.
Sonia has actually done a remarkable job of describing exactly what we're proposing, but with your indulgence, we'd like to just kind of walk you through a little bit of this because we think that this has become quite unique. You've seen the property and the project before. In fact, just late last year, you approved the project as depicted with two unique products. Encore, an age-qualified project, and Cadence, a more family-oriented two-story townhome project. After receiving that approval, and by the way, each of those projects consisted of 98 units each, so it was perfectly balanced between the two. But with that approval, we started the development process and product design, and it became crystal clear that there was an opportunity that we may have missed as we considered the property. Within the bounds of the collector and arterial roadway system, Chinden and Meridian, Director, and Fox Run, we started looking at the opportunity to create a more cohesive project with greater unity and security rather than the two competing demographic projects that we had proposed just late last year. And so the reconsideration of that concept led us to a 196-unit Encore property, as Sonia has identified. It's all age qualified. The property is gated. It offers a higher amenity and level of maintenance than if we had just 98 age qualified units, hence a much more significant community center at the heart of the project. And it does balance itself with some additional greens. It also gives the residents of this project, in the sense of security and privacy, an opportunity, more of an opportunity for the lock and leave kind of a lifestyle that many folks in my demographic seem to enjoy. The amenities proposed, again, supported by 196 residents rather than the 98 as originally, was the Encore clubhouse in the center of the project, and we're looking at a fairly substantial clubhouse with activity centers and uses incorporated, and potentially an indoor pool with the ability to open it up during the course of the summer months. Sonia noted that we've completed the 10-foot regional pathway along Director that ties in with the one on the west side of Fox Run from previous development phases, and that fact that we will complete the Chinden pathway and add the new pathway along Meridian Road. There will also be at the collector intersection of Fox Run and Director at the southwest corner of this property, also at the convergence of that 10-foot pathway, a community-wide pool complex. And in the earlier approval late last year, that was centered more on the project, but could have been potentially a little bit more confusing of who is going to be able to use which. In this case, Encore will have its own facility, and the community pool will be identifiable more directly at a major community intersection. Sonia also noted that there are actually 6 rather different characteristics in the housing options afforded in the project. Some alley-loaded, many alley-loaded, in fact, some accessed by common driveways, and about a quarter of them will be front-loaded that back up to Meridian Road and Director. So 1/4 front-loaded, and the others have a much more unique characteristic from the alley-loaded and giving you the direct relationship of the front of the home to the walking community. The home styles as depicted primarily will be single-story with bonus room options for those that might want a little bit more space for grandchildren to come, and at least they can isolate them a slightly different plane. But it's still the characteristic that we have built not only in the Paramount community, but in other communities that we have done, as depicted on this particular slide. Sonia mentioned in the upper left corner, bounded by red, are lots that will be front yard access on mews. The greens that would provide the front door access with common driveway access at the rear. The blue to the right just depicts lots that would be fronting on one of the two major greens, east and west of the community center. Lower left in the yellow depicts a street frontage. And again, all of these photographs are from projects that we have done in the valley. And then the one on the lower right, again, depicts those that would be on one of those greens with the ability for people to walk from the street in a much more private and amenity-bound area. A little bit more detail on the one that's depicted at the northwest corner here. Down in the southeast corner of the lower right corner of this slide, it depicts 3 units, 2 of them attached, and these are proposed to be 1-bedroom cottages and a 2-bedroom detached unit below those. Again, the front door access on a green, the rear access on a common drive. And Sonia noted in her presentation that we do have a number of units, and these 1-bedrooms we would anticipate being related to the veranda project as independent living units with services provided potentially from that facility. Kind of a transition, they could be rentals, transition for those waiting to get into something when the care requirement is a little bit more needed. All of the conditions that we had concerns with, as noted on this slide, have been addressed and have been presented to you and with the changes that we believe are appropriate and that the commission agreed with. So we, and again, the 2 of those conditions, one of Sonia noted that there was a block length issue and had staff's original recommendation of the lower left portion of the site had suggested breaking into that block with a pathway, but we requested, and we believe it's appropriate to have that pathway kind of at the west end as a separating facility between that and the community pool area, still accessible, within, for the walking folks in and out of the neighborhood. But so that was one of the 2 changes. The other one was instead of having a pathway that went directly to Meridian Road that would break up that block on the easterly side of the site, we proposed to put it more toward the location where it would come out on the collector street rather than the arterial. A decade and a half ago, Brighton's Heritage Commons project was cited as a standard, or became a standard, for single-family projects in the community. We believe that Paramount Director and the quality and character of what is being proposed will become a standard for similar age-qualified projects in the future. Thus, we request council approval as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and would stand for any questions that you have.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Byrd.
On your alley-loaded, how wide is your alleys, Mike?
The alleys will be 20 feet wide.
And it looks, if you look at the floor plan here, you've got cutouts so that when a emergency vehicle is coming, he can get around the corner.
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Byrd, we've actually had several sessions, including the fire department, and worked the radius turns so that they conform to their needs and requirements.
That's what it looked like. Good planning. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm not certain, but what Mr. Turnbull, who drove down from the high country today, may have a comment to make.
Did you come from Colorado?
Mike didn't have to out me like that. Madam Mayor, members of the council, David Turnbull, 12601 West Explorer Drive in Boise. No, I would just say that when Mike talked about how we went through the previous approval process and then we just kind of said, you know, let's go all in on this. Let's go all in on this and create the premier age-qualified community where we can have enough mass to actually put in the kind of amenities and the social programs that I think will be meaningful. You know, my mother's 90 years old now. Many years ago, she looked at a community like this. Mike did mention that we'll have some sort of independent living cottages close to Veranda. She looked at a community like this, but, you know, probably would have lived in one but it wasn't you know, she was 85 years old at the time and didn't make a whole lot of sense for her to be buying a home. So we'll probably provide that option, but it's going to be on a more limited basis. But, you know, we'll spend probably $10,000 per home on amenities here. As Mike said, the clubhouse and the pool and all those areas will be, you know, pretty unique to this environment. It's not the sort of continuing care retirement facility that you'd see at Meadow Lake Village, but this is, I think, for the active adults, age qualified. I think it's going to be setting the standard for some time to come in this whole valley, and we're happy to have it here in Meridian and in Paramount. It's probably the last major application you'll see for Paramount. It's kind of a sobering day for me. So anyway, thank you. I'll stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum?
not really a question, David, but this is a great project. I think it will add a lot of character to the community and is a much-needed product with the growth of the influx of grandparents that are moving to Meridian to be near their families. So kudos. Nice
Thank you.
job.
Yeah, I would note that one of the things that we keyed in on too is Paramount really is a multi-generational community. We have some four-generation families living in that community, so we think it's going to be, I think will be well received. So, thank you, Councilman.
Other questions for Mr. Turnbull? Okay, thank you. There were no members that signed up for this application. Is there anyone who wishes to provide testimony?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
seeing none, I move we close the public hearing on H 2017-0064.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we approve H 2017-0064 and include all staff and applicant comments.
The
I have a
waivers.
motion and a second to approve item 9E. Any discussion from council?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer.
was all the waivers and everything covered, or did we need to include anything in the motion?
There was an outstanding issue that staff did ask council to weigh in on, and that is the requested waiver for access on West Director Street for the common area with the community swimming pool.
I think,
That's on the west side.
Madam Mayor, I think Mr. Wardle covered that when he was.
You are,
Yeah, that's comfortable with it.
okay, and second agrees?
Yes. Second.
Any discussion from council? Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh. Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer. Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Thank you. Item 9F was on Bannock Ridge, H 2017-0050, was requested to continue as the site was not posted properly. I would need a motion to continue this to July 5th.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we continue H 2017-0050 to July 5th, 2017. The site was not posted properly.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue item 9F to July 5th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes. 10A is a department report under community development, and Terry, there you are.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I'm Terry Ricks with Community Development, and 2 weeks ago, we introduced a draft of our proposed new uniform street name and address number code. As you remember, we've been working for quite some time as a committee comprised of representatives from Meridian Police and Fire, our legal department, planning, the city clerk's office, IT, and development services. Outside the city, we've also collaborated with the Ada County Assessor's Office, Ada County Sheriff's 911 dispatch, various GIS personnel, and ACHD. And prior to introducing the ordinance draft to council, we did send a copy to the Building Contractors Association soliciting their input in order to include it with our presentation to the council, but we hadn't received a response when we came before you on June 13th. Following that meeting, Councilman Borton requested we do some additional outreach. First to the attorney from the Boise City Prosecutor's Office assigned to Meridian, asking for her opinion regarding the draft, and most specifically, the violations and penalties section, Title 8, Chapter 2, Section 13D. He also requested we contact additional developers asking for their review and suggestions. We did receive a telephone reply from Christine Starr of the Boise City Prosecuting Attorney's Office after she had compared our current ordinance with the newly drafted version. In addition, she had it reviewed by Rob Lockwood, another attorney in their office who specializes in land use. Their responses were both very complimentary, mentioning specifically that they liked the updated definitions, the streamlined process. They loved the readability of the draft, thought it was well organized and laid out, and said its substance was excellent. Our violations and penalties section has stayed the same. It may be the one area in our current ordinance we have not outgrown. The prosecutor's office was also happy to hear we're very compliance-oriented here and mentioned that they don't ever remember having to prosecute a case under this section for the city of Meridian. They enjoyed reviewing the ordinance and said anytime we'd like to send them items their way for their review and comments, they'd be happy to oblige. We haven't received any response, either positive or negative, from the BCA or other members of the development community following our second request. Madam Mayor, one of the questions you asked last time we were here regarding our current ordinance was, what's broken? The answer in short is that it's not so much broken as it is outdated and outgrown. Our current ordinance lacks sufficient guidelines for Meridian of 2017, not only due to our massive growth and development, which we hear about often, but also the variety and complexity of projects we're now attracting, both commercial and residential. Our proposal is to repeal and replace the ordinance of 1974 with the ordinance of 2017 in order to accommodate the changing needs in our community. Very quickly, some of the items, inconsistencies, and issues remedied by the new ordinance would be the replacement of outdated general information. Addressing and street naming information is now maintained and stored in databases rather than maps. Street name evaluations have been coordinated by the Ada County Assessor's Office rather than ACHD for the past 8 or 9 years. Our once wordy definitions inconsistent with our own UDC and Ada County's ordinance, have been updated to reflect today's standard methods of addressing. Our UDC will also be updated to ensure consistency. We have street naming and addressing issues unique to Meridian, as in 2 predirectionals required for all number streets. We have a unique commercial campus. We have unique commercial campuses such as Sensi and the Village. We have residential subdivisions like Reflection Ridge, like the one Mike Wardle was also just talking about, with houses fronting on grassy park-like mews rather than streets, and having vehicular access coming from unnamed alleyways. Our proposed ordinance provides guidelines for these types of developments, both in addressing, street naming, and signage requirements, rather than the periodic fly-by-the-seat of our pants processes we lean on when we have no specific guidelines at all. We have Regency at River Valley, the Fields at Gramercy, and many other multifamily projects with multiple drive aisles. With encouragement from our former fire marshal, rather than assigning street names to numerous drive aisles within one complex, one main address is assigned to the entire complex with letter identifiers for each building using a systematic pattern familiar to emergency responders and 3-digit unit numbers for each residential unit. We've specified how we should address corner lots: frontage, the way the building faces, the location of the main entrance, vehicular access, and the structure's visibility from the street its address from all matter when assigning addresses. We've included previous direction from council and mayor regarding conditions surrounding street name and address changes. Variance requests are routed to the Planning and Zoning Commission with a limited right of appeal to the City Council. More guidelines are now included to facilitate both the commission and the council in their decision-making. It provides much-needed consistency with our county ordinance while still incorporating guidelines specific to our city. And last but not least, the emphasis is now on public safety, public safety, public safety. If there are changes you'd like us to make, we're happy to take care of that. If there are additional steps you'd like us to take, we're happy to do that. If we've sufficiently answered your questions, you'll see the ordinance in its appropriate format before you next week and hopefully can be approved. I would also like to request that the ordinance be made effective immediately upon your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Any questions from council?
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Palmer.
Terry, that was poetic. I feel like I could listen to you talk about addressing all day long.
Thank you. I'm passionate about it, so that's nice. Thank you, Councilman.
Yeah, that was actually quite fascinating. So I just wanted to thank you for all your hard work in getting us up to date and handling this. As I've been the liaison to community development, I've been just scratching the surface and how complex and complicated that whole situation really is. So thanks for your hard work and keeping us coordinated.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Councilman Bork.
Any questions or other comments? Okay. Well, the request is to bring the final for approval next week, and we'll have that on the July 5th agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Barry, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming back, answering all the questions, and for your passion.
And my poetic passion.
Yes, your poem.
Poetic passion, yeah, sorry, I dropped that describer. I will, since I see Bruce Freckleton here earlier today, we recognized Bruce for 25 years of service. Thank you so much. Okay, item 10B is under our police department. I'll turn this over to Lieutenant Leslie.
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to follow that, Madam Mayor, but I'll try my best. This is a budget amendment on behalf of the MADC grant. I wasn't quite sure what all the letters stood for, so I'll let you guys know. It's Strategic Prevention Framework State Incentive Grant. Got a little nervous when I seen the word strategic in there, to be honest, but this is a 4-year grant. This is year 4 of it. We're asking for spending authority of $87,335. The grant's actually funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And over the last 4 years, we've received $777,000. This is all for program expenses only. There's no wages or benefits included in this grant funding. It runs on the state fiscal year. That's why you're seeing this now. So part of the money is used this year, and then part of the money next fiscal year for us, just because our grant years or our budget years are off. The idea behind this grant is to use the findings from public health research along with evidence-based prevention programs to build capacity and sustainable prevention. This in turn promotes resilience and decreases risk factors in individuals, families, and communities. Some of the specific examples that we've used it for: implemented a positive social norm campaign focused on the majority of youth who choose to live drug-free. You've probably heard of the Natural High campaign. They spent quite a bit of time on some TV public safety announcements, full-length video featuring our local youth. You've probably seen those on KTVB, Impact Radio. $47,000 was spent this last time during this grant season for preventive training for coalition staff and partners, including our school resource officers and our drug recognition experts in the field. Helps build coalition capacity and sustainability while bringing home evidence-based prevention programs and the skills needed to implement them in our community. Promotion, advertising of strategies and programming for drugs included in the Meridian Anti-Drug Coalition strategic plan, Not My Kid presentations, some prevention packets, free drug tests, teens and substance abuse series. Through the alcohol education program, we've done some reality parties, the compliance checks, shoulder tap exercises, and breathalyzer events at some of the local events. Marijuana education plan. There was also a public safety announcement for that. It's helped fund our prescription drug drop-off and take-back program and the safe storage education. And as they enter the last year of their grant, they're assessing the data that they've collected through the evaluation efforts and updating the strategic plan. We'll then identify prevention gaps and revise our strategic plan to best help the community. The updated strategic plan will be used as a guide to assess the coalition's fiscal needs and help us identify sources of funding and then capturing our outreach data. With that, I'll try to answer any questions you may have. Obviously, this was prepared for me by somebody else, Kendall at MADC. So if any questions.
Thank you, Jamie. Council, any questions?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Jamie, that was very poetic.
I know it wasn't, but
It was
thanks.
music to my ears. I move that we approve the Mayor's Anti-Drug Coalition budget amendment for spending authority not to exceed $87,335 for the SPF SIG grant.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh?
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer?
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Borton?
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd?
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Item 11A is ordinance 17-1735. Mr. Clerk, will you please read this ordinance by title?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City of Meridian ordinance number 17-1735, an ordinance file number H-2017-0011, Meridian Meadows Senior Community of Lot 5 of the amended Magic View subdivision as filed in Book 52 of plats at pages 4,443 through 4,446. Records of Ada County, Idaho, located in the southwest of the northeast quarter of Section 17, Township 3 North, Range 1 East, Boise, Meridian, Ada County, Idaho, as described in Attachment A, and annexing certain lands and territory, situated in Ada County, Idaho, and adjacent and contiguous to the corporate limits of the City of Meridian as requested by the City of Meridian, establishing and determining the land use zoning classification of said lands from RUT to LO Limited Office for 5.28 acres in the Meridian City Code, providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, and providing for a summary of the ordinance, and providing for a waiver of the reading rules, and providing for an effective date.
You've heard this ordinance read by title. Is there anyone who would like to hear it read in its entirety?
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Mylum.
I move that we approve ordinance number 17-1735 with suspension of rules.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance under item 11A. If there's no discussion, Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Our item continued from our special work session on the strategic plan was placed under this. And I will first give you upcoming events. Senior Safety Series Workshop at the Public Safety Training Center is this Thursday, June 29th, from 10 to noon. The Youth Farmers Market is on Saturday. If you didn't go to the one last Saturday that had around 30 vendors, certainly they won't have as many this weekend, but they'll be stocked full of produce and handmade goods, so please go out and support our youth. And there is no city council meeting on July 4th. It will be on Wednesday, July 5th, due to the 4th of July on the 4th. We do have Independence Day celebration and fireworks in Story Park, and a lot of festivities from 3 p.m. to 10:30 in the evening. And if any of you wish to volunteer, we would love to have you volunteer at our bounce houses prior to the fireworks. Still looking for volunteers for that opportunity. Okay. In front of us, we're still at Goal 1A, and there was discussion that there are some items to be discussed about viability of being in the plan itself, and I guess I would open it up to discussion. We'll start with strategic goal or focus area 1 under strategic growth. Under 1A, B, C, or D, any discussion on these items? Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Palmer.
Under B, let's see, 1B1, that first tactic, write a scope of work and hire a consultant to help synthesize and market growth goals. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on the point of that. I don't know, I feel like it might kind of be our role to discuss and figure out growth goals, where I don't know if we need to hire yet another consultant for that. And then on 1B2, kind of goes to the same thing there for that first one. I feel like that, mayor and council's role is to figure that out. And then on 1B2, towards the end of that, where it says in priority areas to protect open space, parks, and farmland, that just kind of goes later into the farmland issue that I've brought up concerns with, going back to when that lady had come and presented to us about locking down farmland for eternity. I just get real worried when I start seeing protect or, I guess that phraseology about locking down property. That's my one comments.
Okay. Any other comments under this strategic area of 1A, B, C, or D?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Palmer.
Okay, never mind, I had some more. I got to C. 1C3, I'd like to just completely remove, because it goes into that. identify and preserve lands for interactive educational agricultural-based destinations. That's where then the argument is, well, that doesn't mean what you think it might. But then you go into the tactics, identify specific agricultural lands for agriculture preservation and catalyst projects and prioritize target areas. Determine the feasibility of agricultural preservation. Then 4, identify funding mechanisms for preservation. 5, evaluate, modify, if necessary, existing regulatory tools to create agricultural preservation areas. If the end goal of that is not, in fact, what was presented to us about making it so that nothing else can ever be developed when we set aside those agricultural use areas, then if that's at all the goal of this, I want to just completely remove that. We should let the free market decide that, or give the free market an opportunity to change things down the road if that's the case.
I believe the item under 1C is related to the Fields District and the activities that are underway with a working group that's focused on following up with both the white paper on the Fields District as well as the Pegasus report, and that will be coming back to the council at some point for discussion about where they are, and there's been a lot of activity around that. So,
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
is that element articulated anywhere? Is that on the notes that we're not able to see right now? Frankly, I agreed with Councilman Palmer until we saw our city survey that showed there's a significant amount of our constituents that do support looking at the preservation of farmland. And if I'm hearing that that's not what this objective is related to, that would be helpful.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Cavanagh, so you're asking about notes on the specific tactics or notes on the overall objective? Because we have 2 completed tactics in there. Tactics, we're on 1C3, correct?
3.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, and I can clarify if that's helpful. The notes in the individual tactic, the piece that's on the web or the computer software that we don't quite have the ability to see yet.
Okay, so I apologize, I was trying to take notes. Which tactic do you want me to look at?
If the mayor had, oh, sorry, Madam Mayor. JC, the mayor had indicated that this objective pertains to the Fields District and the work that's going on within that. And I just don't see that articulated anywhere in the objective or in the tactic description.
I think that there is a tactic that says determine the feasibility of agricultural preservation and the catalyst projects included in the Fields District final report.
Which is not on the executive report. It's on the.
Madam Mayor, and perhaps, I feel like this has been a complaint of mine through this whole process, is we have lots of documents that are out there, and I would, I guess, hope that we're all off. I guess wish we were all working off the same document.
This is the document that's part of today's agenda item that was sent out last week, and so,
Madam Mayor,
yes.
unless I was mistaken, we had multiple documents that were sent to us.
You had this document as well as the objective summary. So this document was the executive report that included the 71 objectives and all the tactics, and then the objective summaries was the one that gave you just the list of objectives.
I have that one over here. I was in the impression we were working off the executive
I'm
report.
going back and, I'm toggling back and forth, but
It's very difficult to follow.
yes, it is. Still doesn't say that. This is still not the same one.
I don't see it,
This is
but
the summary.
if the mayor says it's in there, it's in there. I just-
Do you guys want to have a conversation here? Because Dean's trying to figure out what's being said.
Madam Mayor, I'd be happy to have a conversation here.
Okay?
So for clarification then for the rest, Madam Mayor, I guess I'm requesting if you could refer to which document you're reading from when you're going through this and that staff go through. So therefore, each member of council will be able to follow, so we won't have to have these sideways conversations that are offline that could be disruptive to the meeting. Please.
Well, I believe that when I did read that objective, I did say it was a tactic under the objective that you were referring to.
Correct, but Madam Mayor, we can go back and forth on this. If you're willing to heed to my request, I would appreciate that. I think that will make this meeting go a little more smoother. Thank you.
Okay? Okay. Any other questions?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Palmer.
The only other thing on 1B2 that kind of stood out to me under the tactic 8 is consider use of political tools like moratoriums and fast-tracking permits as incentives / disincentives. That's under identify priority growth areas and incentivize growth and development. Just ideologically, philosophically, I don't know the terminology. I disagree with this as an appropriate or being an improper role of government. I think using the fact that we may be slow in a permitting process shouldn't give us a tool to create a fast track process for picking winners and losers. I think anybody who wants to develop, we should be able to do it in whatever fast track opportunity that's possibly available, instead of using it as, we like what you want to do here, so this is an incentive for you, and figuring out some kind of disincentive through our process to disincentivize somebody to develop a certain thing in an area, whether it's allowed or not. So that tactic, I'd love to see us stay away from, and then I'll ignore the first ones I brought up. That's a big concern to me, and then the 1C issues, 1C3 issues. So I don't know if we want to talk about it or skip to a vote about kicking it out and moving on.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner.
Specifically to item 1C. Specifically to item 1. My mic's on, Dean. Okay. Specifically related to item 1C3, when this report was presented to us in February, it was marked as 0% complete. When we saw this form again in March, it was marked as 100% complete, and I believe it's listed as 32% complete. I guess, Madam Mayor, I'd like to see an explanation as to what's caused the change in completion, and is the number that's reported complete accurate?
Madam Mayor, I can answer that.
Yes, Ms. Holman.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Cavanagh, on this particular one, if you look on your screen, I pulled up, these are the tactics. And originally, when community development filled this out, we were mid-course changing how we weighted tactics, marked them complete, all of that. So I think it was either tactic 2 or 4, that was the only one that had a weight to it. And what they had done is under objective, percentage of the objective, they had marked that as 100% and then check the complete box. So the way the software read it is there's only one tactic and it's 100% complete. So I followed up with, I believe it was Bruce Chatterton after that meeting, and said, oh, okay, you have to actually weight all the tactics, because that was just an error in how he marked the stuff in the software. So now it's correct.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, any other, yes.
Question on 1B2. I'm showing that in a previous presentation, staff recommended changing that tactic from high to medium. Is that still
Yes.
the requested change? So, Madam Mayor, I guess a procedural question. Are you looking for us to take action on that, or is it just assumed that if staff wants to change it, that it's changed?
The notes that staff request changes on your objective summary, you know, with the one under 1.8.3 that's suggested to delete, the one under 1.B.2 to change to medium, and the request or suggestion on 1.B.5 from finance to change from high to medium under item 1A. These, or 1A and 1B, these are the ones that in this first section, strategic growth, are the recommendations from staff. Any further discussion on the items under strategic growth? Okay, so there are comments on 1.8.3 to delete. What is the council's desire on that?
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Flo Roberts.
may I recommend, instead of like removing something, deleting it completely, we give it some classification, whether it is just deleted in the verbiage as a, so that when we go to compare it at the end of things, we know what happened with that, and we can track it better, that we don't actually remove it from the document, but we classify it as deleted or something, but if that's our choice, to delete it, but that we don't actually remove it from the document.
We could note under priority remove. And so it stays, but it does have that notation. We can also, and the comments, under staff comments, it will say the reason for that request.
Thank you.
So I guess in front of you is that removing or changing the priority from high to the notation on remove. Would you like to do a voice vote on that? Okay.
On which one?
On 1.A.3, reform the Meridian Development Corp. The recommendation is to remove that as an objective. So to note in the priority column, change from high to remove. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay. The next item that has been discussed is 1.B.2. This is a request from staff to change priority to medium from high. Any discussion on that? 1.B.2, identify priority growth areas.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Palmer.
So it's identify priority growth areas and incentivize growth and development. I don't think
Yes.
that's the proper role of government. I don't think that I've got at least 4 of us that would agree with me. So at the minimum, I really disagree with one of the tactics, which I understand you don't necessarily want to discuss the tactics, but I really don't think we need to be incentivizing and disincentivizing anybody, picking winners and losers.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
I'd be happy to vote on any and all objectives that any council member has an issue with. So to Councilmember Palmer's point, don't need to make an assumption. Be happy to call for a vote and
Yeah.
allow your council to articulate where they are.
Madam Mayor?
It's Ms. Mylum.
So the only thing on that that I believe that is good, reason for us to incentivize is businesses that are bringing in family living wage jobs. I think I don't have a problem having some kind of incentive for that. So I wouldn't want to remove it,
Madam Mayor?
but I don't think it should be a high priority necessarily.
Thank you. And again, we're looking at the objective, but I appreciate the feedback on the tactics, which will be noted. So 1.B.2, the changing from high to medium is in front of us. Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
moving up, Councilwoman Little Roberts' suggestion, I think, is a great one with regards to notating the running tally of items that have been removed or completed. And in that regard, 1A2 is noted as completed. So under priority,
C.
we can, 1A2?
Yes.
Yeah,
That has
so
been
instead
done,
of
yep.
high, it would be noted as completed, perhaps the date, signify that was completed, or at least designated as complete on this date. And then, I guess, redlined through, similar to the notation we would make when something's just removed.
Okay, when it's 100% complete, we will, under the priority column, change to complete.
Correct.
Okay?
And it would be,
Do you want to vote on that?
it'd be stricken through as well.
Yeah.
We know it's not being worked on.
Right.
I don't think it needs a vote, just something to help us track.
Okay. The next one I noted had discussion on it was 1.B.5. Was there anything before that in 3 or 4? If there was, I apologize, I didn't mark that. Or was
Madam Mayor?
1.B.5? Yes.
I guess my assumption is, again, on 1B3, there hasn't been any progress made, but we don't have an explanation as to the why tonight.
Probably the reason to the why is it did not have an original start until 2019.
Madam Mayor, then a procedural question that might be beneficial for us. Have the dates changed on the executive summary that was provided to us than what was initially shared with us in March?
Ms. Holman?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, when you see on this report where it says original start and original end date, that's what is from when you originally adopted the plan. Those dates have not changed. So when it says original, those are hard-coded in, only I can change those. Sorry. So that's on that small spreadsheet. On the executive report that has everything, the 58-page report, I'll just call it that. When it says start and end date, those grab the earliest tactic start date and the latest tactic end date from each objective. So the date range spans from the beginning to the end of any of the tactics underneath that objective. So if you look at the 58-page report, just like under 1A1, on the left, you'll see in green original dates, January 1st, 2016 to 12/31/16. Current dates, you can see that one moved out, probably because some of the tactics, the timelines on tactics changed, whatever. But that's why I captured the original date, so you could see what was originally adopted a year and a half ago.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner?
Jason, and just for clarification, the green date that we see on the executive report was the originally adopted date. The indigo colored dates are the modified dates, and those dates were modified by,
By changing the underlying tactics.
Madam Mayor, follow-up. Who changed the underlying tactics?
Once, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Cavanagh, so as we developed the software and all of that was plugged in, the dates that were originally plugged into this software were those original dates. But we were able to create tactics, and each of the tactics had their own date range, which did not exist before the software. So as people went in and lined out these tactics better, and they got assigned to different people, some objectives might have 8 tactics and 3 different people lead tactics underneath an objective. They put in date ranges, and that is what drives the indigo colored dates, if that makes any sense. Before the completion of the software, you couldn't there were no date ranges around tactics. It was just over this big, broad objective, which was like throwing a dart at a giant dartboard and, figuring out dates. To me, the indigo dates allow you to drill down to a tactical level, a date range. So to me, those give you a little more accuracy.
Madam Mayor, one additional question then. JC, can you walk us through who's driving, I guess, if a tactic date surpasses the originally adopted date, who's making that decision and why? If a
Madam
date-
Mayor?
Oh, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, those would be whoever is leading those tactics, or if you can look on the screen here, you'll see, this is at the objective level. Right here, Bruce Chatterton is in charge overall of this objective. And under the tactics, they're assigned, there's 3 to him. One is Robert Simison in the mayor's office. So the software looks at what they've put in here, that's your earliest date, and here's your latest date in your indigo date range, as you called it. So the people who are leading the tactics underneath it are driving the date ranges, but this Bruce Chatterton has ultimate responsibility over that objective.
Madam Mayor, I appreciate that explanation. That clears things up for me. I guess I'm still struggling to understand why we are scheduling tactic deadlines after the date that was adopted by council. I'm hoping someone can provide some clarification as to that piece.
I don't understand your question.
Madam Mayor, if I can clarify, if I may. Council adopted dates with the strategic plan. After that, someone's scheduled tactics to be completed after the deadline that council had established. I'm trying to find out who and why.
I can't speak on behalf of the lead and all 71 objectives. Although I will say that in January of 2016, these tactics did not all exist. The adoption of the objectives created the motion of then each department looking at the objectives, finalizing tactics that support those, and started to work on realistic timeframes. And so they did not put all of that effort in prior to the official adoption because it puts a lot of work in there. And they wanted to first get an idea of where council was coming from and weighing in on the objectives before they put a lot of time and resources in putting a tactical plan and specific timelines to it. So that's all I can say is that until we had an official plan, that is what we said then and what we continue to say now is that's when the real work began in trying to see how to move into the execution phase of meeting objectives, of developing and firming up the tactics and organizing to see if they were in the right order as they started to work those and then put in realistic timeframes.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Mylum.
Sorry, now this has brought new confusion to me that I didn't catch before. Or I'm either reading it wrong or maybe it's typographical or that's how you want it, but we have several objectives and tactics that the start date and the completion date is the same day that was on November 17th of 2016. So it might even be a high priority Or whether some of are high priorities, some are low priorities, and they still don't have a completion date? Is that intentional? Or was it due last November?
It was to begin, and it all is driven on the tactics on the completion date. So I can't answer that.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Mylum, when the software was created, I'm the one who put in all the objectives, all the tactics, everything in there. So back to the tactics did not have a date range before, so it just defaulted in the software to whatever date I put it in. So if someone has not gone in and updated a date range on a tactic, which I think people possibly haven't on some of them that may be out in the future, as far as this is something that's not coming up for a year or two. It means they probably have not gone in there and updated those date ranges. So the date range you see is the date I put it into the software.
Mayor?
Ms. Mylum.
JC, so if you go back to, even of the objectives, like, it seems that if this is something that we've adopted and are working on currently, at some point, somebody would have gone on there and at least changed the date of the objective to be complete, especially if it's a high priority.
Are you talking about the objective or the tactics?
Both. So if you go back, this is the tactic, but if you go back to,
Give me an example,
Here.
if you don't mind.
okay, 11, here, 2A2,
1A1, that's a great example.
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Holman.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Mylum, why don't I walk you through this one really quick so you can understand? This is an objective. At the top, you got your focus area, the original start date and the original end date are dates that I hard entered in there. That is what happened a year and a half ago when we adopted the plan. We had those date ranges. You have your strategic goal. Let's see, go through. Right here, this planned start date and anticipated completion date, you can't change those. Those are roll up from the underlying date ranges in the tactics. Percent complete can't be hard entered. That rolls up from the underlying tactics. Estimated cost, you can put costs in there if you want to for each individual tactic, but if that helps explain it all. So for example, on this one, it is 100% complete because all three of these are marked complete and those added together equal 100%. So then these dates, the earliest date, these didn't all happen, I'm assuming, on November 21st, 2016, but
it's a big day.
Brenda Sherwood, yeah, it was a busy day. Brenda Sherwood probably went in there afterwards. Once the software was complete, this was work that was probably, had already been done. So she didn't go in and update those date ranges to when those tactics were actually worked on and completed. She probably just marked them as complete. So it shows everything started and was completed on November 21st.
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
What would
Mr.
be
Board.
A valuable feature of this process as we go forward, this example might be one that illustrates it, is when an adopted objective is completed or staff believes it's complete, to have a closeout report similar to like Public Works does annually in its projects, have a closeout report on an objective be presented to us that says, I'm the lead on objective 2B2. It is 100% complete. Here's my closeout report. I did these things, yeah, et cetera, et cetera. We can answer questions and address it once it's closed out. Doesn't really move the ball for today's conversation, but that might be, from a process perspective, a valuable way to close the loop on completed objectives when they occur by the person who's in charge of it, if this one's in fact complete.
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Mylum.
So you're telling me that the anticipated completion date cannot be manually changed. It has to do with what dates are put into the objectives and it automatically rolls up?
Correct.
Because this, I mean, I'm sure this software costs a lot of money, and to give us that kind of information that doesn't really tell us anything about when anything happened because we can't, so on the page that you showed us, which is what you shared with us, we don't have access to that. So I couldn't even tell that it was originally dated at 2020, which was great information. But then you go in there and it was due in 16. I guess, you understand what I'm saying?
No. I will just say that until IT and JC worked on establishing the software, you didn't have any of this information.
That's what I'm saying is the underlying tactics have to be changed. It rolls up to those dates right here are all driven off of the date ranges in these tactics. So this column looks at the earliest date and populates that. This column, latest date, populates that. Does that help?
Yes, that does. So in this particular instance, then the error was that she didn't put the date when she completed the tactic, and that created the misinformation that we got on the report. Is that correct?
That's correct, because these dates were not updated. It was just the date that it defaulted to when I entered the information into the system.
Thank you.
Other questions on item 1, strategic growth? Okay, so the question, Mr.
Sorry,
Kavner.
I guess I do have a question, not just to one, but overall. For the discussion, I guess, this evening, we should be going by the dates that have been created when objectives have been established, not the dates that were adopted by council, because there's a significant amount of those that are in contrast. I just want to, again, make sure that we're all going by we're all being consistent, we're all looking at the same thing. So if it's the dates that council adopted, or these other dates, that either one's fine for tonight's discussion, but I just think that we should all be on the same page.
As far as I know, these dates are the original dates that were approved in the first plan.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Cavanagh, that's kind of a philosophical question, because if you look back on your 58, and Councilmember Borton and I had this exact discussion regarding, there were dates adopted a year and a half ago, which is on this report, on the left, in the green, original dates. Those were adopted. Deviating from those dates because people put different date ranges underneath tactics, that's a question. Does the plan drive the work as far as, and I don't know, Councilmember Borton, you and I discussed this, it's been several months ago now, but do you drive the plan to meet those dates, or can those dates be flexible as you dig into an objective, and originally you might have thought you had 3 tactics, now you have 11 tactics? Are you driving those 11 tactics to meet that end date no matter what, even if you dug into it and you found out there's a heck of a lot more work involved in achieving that objective? Are we operating to that date? Or is there flexibility within the plan through defining the tactics? I don't know, hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying.
Madam Mayor, I guess, I don't know if that's a question that council's qualified to answer. I think that seems more like an operational question than a philosophical question. I guess that would be one that I would look to the mayor to help articulate a response.
And I would say that we were really focused on the objectives and the priority levels, and not the original start date and end date when we started this in February. So many of the tactics have gone in and been updated, both objectives, and we've had this conversation as well before, and the tactics being operational. And so I don't know. Do we want to get into the operationalization of this plan, or do we want to see if we're still in alignment with getting at least an agreement on the objectives and the priority levels?
Madam Mayor, I guess, I'm just looking for the answer to my question. Do you want us to go by the dates that were adopted by council or the dates that have been changed?
I
That's all.
can't tell you that right now,
Well, then,
because I
Madam
don't
Mayor-
know what has been changed from the original start date to the original end based on the changes that are going on in the software program. So I can't even tell you that.
Well, Madam Mayor, I hope then you can understand the frustration for the council, because if you don't know, how can you expect us to know? Dates have changed. This is your plan, so we're looking to you for some
No,
answers on that.
Luke, this is the city's strategic plan.
But when we're talking
And
about,
operationally, it certainly is, and we can talk about the completion, which we have ad nauseum, or we can sit here and talk about why Brittany didn't go in and change the dates when she marked percentage complete. We can talk about that, but I can't give you any answers because I can't get inside Brenda's head. I have asked each of the directors, do they feel comfortable with what is being presented in front of you with all of the columns, with the objective, with the description, with the original start date, end date, lead department priority, and what they're requesting as discussions for city council, and that is what I can say. I'm comfortable that they've looked at these. And that is what is in front of you. Are we done discussing strategic growth, or is there further items to consider?
Madam Mayor, by way
Mr.
of
Board.
brief summary, focus area number 1, those objectives were modified, 2 objectives were modified. One was removed, and one was removed. One was removed because it was just removed, and one was removed because it's complete.
There was, you have taken action on item 1A3 to note, to have that removed.
Correct.
Change from high. 1B2 from high to medium, and 1B5 from high to medium. We haven't gotten to 1.C.3, which is the item that Mr. Palmer wanted to discuss.
And 1A2 is removed because it's complete.
1A2 is going to be marked complete.
Gotcha. Okay. Making sure I'm up to speed.
Okay? Was there any other thing, any other item before 1.C.3? Okay, there was a concern from Councilman Palmer to keep that in. So, council, any discussion on that?
say 1C3.
1C3, yes.
Given the fact that it came back as a priority on the survey, I believe we should leave it in and continue to pursue, stick with the plan.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Palmer.
And when, in the survey, you know, when it talks about preserving farmland, I mean, that sounds all great and dandy, and if that's all it is, then that's not permanent. You know, if we're seeking to have, whether we do it as a park, as a community farm, whatever, that Parks runs or something, that's not a permanent, for eternity use of the land. And in the survey, there's no way that it would have been conveyed that the idea of locking down a piece of property to where it can never have any other use forever other than agricultural purposes, that wasn't conveyed in the city survey. And that's what my main concern is. While I don't, you know, whether it's preserved as a park or any other use, that's not permanent. That's not as urgent an issue to me as the idea of saying nobody can ever use a piece of property for something other than what it is in the moment. And that's my concern with where this may be going.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Lowell Roberts.
it's my understanding that when anything would need to come back in front of us anyway, and that is what they are currently looking at is a type of development with, instead of a park, a leased out farmland, that type of thing. So it could be a living, working farm in conjunction with development to preserve those agricultural roots.
It could be a number of things, and as Ms. Lowell Roberts noted, anything that would relate to any strategies for specific policy would come to City Council. And so you all have the final say on this.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Then if I might ask you, has that been part of a discussion beyond the presentation that the lady had presented to us? Or is the whole conversation in other uses other than that which I'm most afraid of here?
Certainly, there's a number of strategies or tactics under this, and there's an effort going on right now from a work group looking at the various areas of land use, economic development, and what is the third group? A special project. And so at some point, this will be brought back to council as these work groups start to bring recommendations forward for consideration by council. Certainly, this is probably an area to have Bruce and Brenda come in and give an update as to what they're doing. Okay, so, council, those in favor of keeping 1.3 or 1.C.3 in the plan as stated in the objective summary 2007 changes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay.
Sound like a horse.
Feed you some cookies.
Okay, anything under 1D or 1D1? I didn't see anything in those, 1D1. Okay, item 2, economic vibrancy. The notes in the 2017 changes objective summary that was sent to council, 2.A.4 gives a notation that this is an ongoing, and the completion date needs to be pushed out substantially, at least 1 year. And then 2.C Point 3 is recommendation to change the priority from high to medium. Any other items on this, in this to discuss and consider?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner.
2.A.1, this is a case where both the dates accepted by council and dates established by tactics are the same. It appears, regardless, it was supposed to be completed in 2016. It's completed at 52%. Curious if we can be updated if there's hurdles that are prohibiting getting this accomplished, if its priority is should remain, if you have any additional information to share.
I do not have additional information to share.
In that case, Madam Mayor, I'd suggest we remove this tactic, this objective.
Remove an objective that's 50% complete?
Well, Madam Mayor, I guess I would hope that we'd be able to be updated on this, and if we don't have an explanation, then I would support removing it.
Okay. Those in favor of remove or retaining 2.A.1, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, or no, sorry. I was in the
Okay.
removal.
Those opposed, say nay.
Nay. Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer.
if I may, maybe just a question to be asked eventually. In fact, when I was going through this earlier, several hours ago, I ran into community development to see if Brenda was around to ask the question. On 2A1, going into tactics again, tactic 6, just a question for an eventual answer. Implement a relationship management software for business retention that will also track business data. My question is the purpose of this tactic to pursue like a business registration with the city, or because it was something the city had attempted or had discussed a few years ago, and the business community made clear that they were not interested in paying a fee and registering with the city so that the city could track, this business data to have an idea of what businesses are here. And the argument was made that it's so that then we can tell other businesses that are interested in coming that, yeah, we don't have anybody like you here, come on down. But that meant that all the businesses that want to be in Meridian had to register for it, and then come year 2 or 3 had to start paying a fee to be part of the
I
registration.
think this was the OpSites website that Brenda's been working with brokers on, and being able to have a searchable database to show what available properties are in our community, what the sizes are, some of the statistics. She has come and presented in front of council on what that program looks like, and it has been deployed, currently using that.
Madam Mayor? And I think that's number 5, because OpSites is mentioned later in the 58-page document. But on 6, it's in there as a different tactic. So if they were kind of the same thing, so be it. But I just wanted to make sure that we're not putting staff time into, or hope that we're not putting staff time into pursuing.
Oh, I'm sorry. The number 6 is a business retention software that as she goes out and does business visits, those are tracked in her own database so that she has that information.
Awesome.
For follow-up, and also in being able to, if a like business is looking at locating here, she has information to tap into on possible connections for like businesses.
Madam Mayor, then that's fantastic. It just raised a flag with me, and you just lowered it, so perfect.
Okay. Okay. Anything further under economic development? We did have, if there's nothing before 2.A.4, and where they are asking to extend the original end date another year to 2019.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer.
you said before 2A4 or including 2A4?
2A4 is, it is currently in process, but because of the request from planning that it be pushed out an additional year. And that
Madam
can
Mayor.
certainly be put into the October update and as to some of the influences behind that.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Palmer.
And again, going into the tactics, number 4 there was something that concerned me. I feel like every permit should be fast-tracked, that, again, we shouldn't be using the fact that we're not always super fast at doing things to incentivize others to do what we want them to do and move theirs along faster. But, again, that's a tactic for yourself.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
I just want to commend staff, particularly Caleb, for bringing forth this recommendation and being transparent about the request for dates. I appreciate you doing that.
Okay, so council, I would ask if you approve the changing of the completion date to 2019 or 12/19. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, anything before 2C3?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Palmer.
On 2B2, I would like to remove the whole thing. While diversity promotion sounds all fine and dandy, if color blindness and non-discrimination is the goal, then continually promoting and talking about awareness, awareness and colorblindness are not, they don't go together. And so when we start putting a bunch of time and money into bringing attention to things that we're trying to weed out of society, I feel like it goes against the purpose of the process. And that is completely just philosophical on my part. I feel like the more emphasis that happens on all these things, the bigger the problems end up out the other side.
Madam Mayor?
You said that.
I did, sorry.
Oh, Mr. Kavner.
While I agree with Councilman Palmer's decision to remove this entirely. We're constantly being told by staff in all departments that they, because of growth, are having to do so much and so much more. And I just don't see building and using staff time, specifically in the HR department, to promote cultural and workforce diversity. I just don't think it's a objective that we need here.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Mylum.
Diversity is more than just black and white, and it would be nice if people were colorblind, but unfortunately, that's not the world that we live in. And I think the more understanding and education that we can get and give our employees, the better humans they will be.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
are you aware of any issues at the city related to cultural or workforce diversity?
If I was, I probably wouldn't tell you.
Okay, all the more reason, I guess we should remove it.
Because then it would be an HR issue.
Not specifics, just if they happen or not.
So, council, I guess those in favor of keeping 2.B.2, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
Nay. It was a tie.
Okay, can I have a, was,
It was a tie.
It's tie.
okay?
Take the vote.
I think you guys need to agree. So you have,
Madam Mayor,
I'm never going to agree.
Mr. Palmer.
let's discuss it some more.
Okay, do it.
There was, I mean, the point has kind of now been made that there was no talk, no problems about diversity issues, but now that we've brought it up, there's lots of, we have a split even. If it's not a problem, if there's nothing broken, let's not fix it.
I guess I would just say, I think some of this was driven by a company that was looking at Meridian and wanting to see better policies to promote diversity and the education of how an important aspect of a diverse work group is in our community. It was a result of CDBG and some of the requirements we have to show that we have certain policies within the city. And it's also driven by ICRIMP, who wants diversity training to minimize risk in the workforce. This has a number of influencers behind it. Again, it's in there because our team believes that this is important to stay focused on both the message and showing that we encourage a diverse workforce.
Madam Mayor.
Ms.
I believe
Milo.
it also has an influence on economic development, and I don't know the numbers, but I don't think it's something that we're spending an obscure amount of money on.
Don't know. Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
question for Bill. Bill, if I remember correctly, didn't the city implement a non-discrimination hiring policy?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Cavanagh, yes, we do have a non-discrimination ordinance that applies to the city in regards to hiring, as well as city events and city activities. I guess if you don't mind, I think Councilmember Milam hit on a lot of what this is for, in addition to the evolving culture of the workforce, the evolving culture of the valley. If you look at some of these tactics here, some of them apply outward and some of them apply inward. And diversity in the workforce isn't just one thing, and it isn't ever complete. I don't think you can ever just say, oh, we're good. No, we're never going to have an issue. And even if we don't have an issue today, it doesn't mean we don't have to have this on the forefront of how we do business, at least internally. If some of the external things are concerning to you, I understand where you're coming from. But internally, this is not an area that we can just teach once a year. It's like all other types of workplace, respectful workplace training. And when we're talking about diversity anymore, we're not just talking about race or color, we're talking about age and gender identities. And there's lots of things that are continuing to evolve and aren't going to stop. So I think that's where a lot of this originated. Some of the outward stuff, again, those are not really my area, but that's the inward stuff. I think it is critically important that the message of what type of workforce and what type of business we are is important to have as an objective from the city.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Palmer.
Madam Mayor, I think some of the goals outlined in the tactics are accomplished just through what's naturally happening, throughout Meridian anyway. For example, Tactic 6, promote diversity awareness in the community by holding a diversity celebration in Meridian, supporting similar events elsewhere in the Treasure Valley. We don't need to create an event. We have the Bosnia celebration at Kleiner Park the last few years. That's been awesome. There's different things like this that are just going to start happening anyway. Again, until there's an issue, I don't feel like forcing it is what needs to be done right now.
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Lowell Roberts.
Having worked with two companies that were very concerned, that were looking at coming in, that were very concerned about diversity, a statement that it's in our strategic plan is very important to companies that is definitely on their radar. And so it definitely is an economic development tool that has been used at least twice on projects that I've been involved with.
So if there's no further comment, I will ask again for a second round. Those in favor of keeping N2B2, those in favor say aye,
Aye.
and those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I was getting clarification. If the motion is to remove
No,
as
it's
objective.
to keep.
If it's to keep, then I vote no.
Okay? We will come back to that. Okay, 2C1, 2C2, and 2C3. Is there discussion on those?
Oh, she didn't abstain.
Okay? Responsive government.
Madam Mayor? Can we go back
Ms.
to
Holman.
2C, I'm sorry, 2C3, there's a request to change that from high to medium.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't believe we voted on that, so.
You're right, we didn't. Um, 2C3, council, the request is to change the priority from high to medium. Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. 3 is responsive government. There's a couple of areas here that 3A1 was a request to change the second performance measure to change the performance measures to the 2020 survey. So this would be to extend out the end date, the original end, to 2020.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
when those were presented back in April, I went in and I had changed those because at that point, I didn't know that performance measures or changes to performance measures were something council was going to vote on and approve. So I went in and changed those. I can undo it if that's, I just didn't want you to think I made assumptions on your behalf. At that point, I didn't know that was something council was going to vote on with performance measures. So I just wanted to clarify that was me that changed that.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, and 3C1, it was a request to change the priority from low to high. And certainly this is anticipation because of what we just experienced over the last winter. Any issues there? 3C3, move the performance measure and the lead from support services director to IT. Any questions on this? Okay. 3D1, the lead did change from mayor to support services. Okay. 3D2 also was a lead change, as was 3D3. Anything on those two? Okay, 3E1, this would be to change high to complete.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Neri.
So since this is mine, I just have a question, and part of it, I think, this is a long evolutionary process to create this plan. So this particular tactic, I noted some other departments, the planning one said it's an ongoing thing because it was talking about ordinances and zoning and a variety of different things that we do, that we continue to do. This is something we continue to do. So even though it's complete because we've done the work and created the information and we will update the information as necessary, we're going to continue to do this every city election, we update every commission at least annually on legal changes that are relevant to them, especially public records and those kinds of things. So I marked it complete because we've done this, but it's not going to go away for us. So I don't know if you'd prefer it remain on with an ending date so that it routinely gets reported, or however you'd like to do it. But we've had you folks have had a lot of discussion about dates, and you'll notice in here, because I am not the best at this, the dates are originally were back in January of 16, because when we wrote this plan, we all had to guess when would we do this. And we all guessed really, really poorly. And we also all guessed based on some assumptions on how the information would get collected. So some of the dates in here are different and for good reasons. But the entire package was completed within the time frame, so that's why I didn't ask to change the dates. But you'll notice there's a few in there, like the Tactic 2, it looks like we did it in one day, but we didn't really do it in one day. But those are the things that, some of them are wonky, and I know that's been concerned for some of you, but that's why, at least on mine, this was like that. But anyway, if you'd like to leave it in, that's fine, because we're going to continue to do it regardless. If you want to mark it complete, because the objective was to make sure we got in the forefront and got taken care of, we have done that.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Holman?
may I weigh in on that? This has come up a few times in the, as people go through different things in the strategic plan, it's complete, and now becomes something they're going to look at every year, or every 3 months, or every 6 months, or whatever it might be for this. A strategic plan, as I understand it, it's a plan for the next 5 years to get to some next point. Some of it along the way that you complete ends up becoming ongoing operations. So to me, when you have something like this, it's noted in there somehow, okay, now legal department now has this within their operational plan, or some sort of policy, or some sort of procedure within their department that within 3 months of X date, we do this every year. And it drops off the strategic plan. Otherwise, the strategic plan someday will be a 40,000-page document. So I think things that we accomplish that now become part of an annual procedure or a monthly procedure, or whatever it might be, that's memorialized in the plan. We have designed the software so that nothing ever goes away. If I go in there and I delete an objective, or we delete a tactic, or it is captured there, and I can print a report at some future date that can show you from the date the strategic plan started. In 2017, we deleted 4 objectives. In 2018, we added 2 more. In 2019, we deleted. You can print all of that. Will show and is being captured, so that, because it is a living, breathing document.
Yeah, so that one is a head scratcher, because it does need to be considered, and it is ongoing. Do you want to add yet another definer under this column rather than complete? Ongoing.
That's what I was thinking.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner?
I would support whatever you think is best operationally. I appreciate hearing from Bill tonight on that, because it was one of my questions, because to Ms. Holman's point, there's a few objectives throughout here that kind of repeat each year. So whatever is best, as long as we are consistent in that this is either something that is reviewed each year and is marked as complete, or is a tactic that never gets marked complete into perpetuity. Whatever is best for your needs, Madam Mayor, would be a decision I would support.
I would recommend ongoing, so it's something that is reported to council during the updates. So as it does apply, there is a specific report to it.
Madam Mayor, then a caveat. I think that we've talked at length that, I think even Ms. Holman spoke on it briefly, if 2 years from now, we begin on a new 5-year plan, maybe we get to a point where if things are no longer part of the plan, it's just part of how we do business, then maybe it doesn't necessarily need to be articulated as part of a strategic plan.
What I would, and that is to weigh in on, if you feel that it doesn't need to be specifically reported on, it doesn't have to say ongoing. It can be complete and then it's not noted. Having it listed as ongoing, you would like a report on that in the update. So it would be completely up to you. Certainly with roles and responsibility in the every 2-year cycle as the training happens, I think it's worth the city council weighing in and seeing the packet and making comments on how we can continue to improve that. That will happen regardless, but this just keeps it higher profile. So I can go either direction. I think it should be ongoing, so you can weigh in.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Lowe Roberts.
another way to keep it ongoing, but out of the strategic plan, would be to put it in standard operating procedures and just have Bill included in a report, like many other items with their regular SOPs. But generally, ongoing procedure is not part of a strategic plan.
So any opposition to having 3E1 change from high to complete? Okay. 3E2 would like to delete and merge with 3E4 and with a lead change. Any comments on that? Okay. And those were the areas that staff brought recommendations. Any areas under responsible government or responsive government? Yes.
And maybe this was addressed, and I don't recall, in February with 3E4, Councilmember Borton asked if plan was to jump in and do the entire budget or to do this on a pilot-based project starting with a specific department. I don't have that question as ever being answered. I don't know if it was, and I may have missed it, it's very possible, or if that question still remains.
That was brought in by our CFO in one of his updates, that they would like to bring back the proposal for a pilot. They have not completed their evaluation process. They will be bringing a recommendation to do a pilot, but they've been busy trying to do some follow-up with other communities in Idaho that have used the priority-based budgeting process, and they're trying to incorporate a lot of that feedback into any recommendation they bring forward.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing further under 3, we'll move to safe, healthy, and secure. And there's a number of areas that have asked for changes. The first one is 4A4. Any discussion on anything before that?
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Kavner.
4A2, and just in my conversations with fire, I don't see the need for this to be a strategic update or a strategic objective. I think that we have a proactive fire department that when they identify gaps, they bring solutions, and building this as a strategic objective to me seems unnecessary, and I'd support its removal.
Okay, any further discussion on 4A2?
I guess it ties, Madam Mayor, sorry, it ties to 4A1 as well. If we're going to direct fire to create a safety profile, seems like that would be a tool to be used in 4A2. Appear to go together, in or out.
Certainly, if you have an interest in the department weighing in on that, we can have a specific discussion on that in the October update. Or you can choose to do what you want. I don't care. Because that's certainly something they have to do anyway, so.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Palmer?
Yeah, all those points combined, to me, say get rid of all of 4A.
The whole thing?
Because then you get to 4A5 and it's well, duh.
Certainly, the strategies in establishing benchmarks and identifying where you want to go is needed for, to know that you're moving the dial and you're achieving the goals that are set. So this has both to do in fire and police, 4A, and one of our highest priority areas is to be a safe community. So it would be a huge omission in our strategic plan not having this pointed out.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Kavner.
While I don't disagree with your comments, the vast majority of those objectives are listed as low or medium. So while I think the overall philosophy about having a safe community is probably something we all support, again, many of these objectives that are in here don't seem completely necessary to achieving that.
I think that 4A2 and 4A2 has to follow 4A1. And certainly 4A just specifically has everything to do with public safety, and both in our police and fire and the levels of service. And I think that's what some of this is really trying to identify and accomplish, is setting that level of service and some of the objectives to getting there and maintaining.
Madam Mayor, while I don't want to beat a dead horse, again, this 4A2 is a case of that the dates have changed, and in this particular case, the indigo, the ones that have been driven by objective and not by the dates adopted by council, should have been accomplished in 2016. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to respond if we have a reason as to why it's listed as 0%, or I think any of that information would be helpful, at least in determining if I would be more willing to support keeping it.
I certainly think that some of these probably are in the process of getting a yes and transferring over to showing completed. You have considered the industry standard and best practices in fire to establishing a level of service. And So some of this has come in front of council, so I know they're actively working on it. I can't answer where they are at in being able to trigger that 100% completed on each of the tactics. But you have had updates in front of you on some of these that indicate they are active in looking at accomplishing those tactics.
Madam Mayor, and to that point, maybe, JC, sorry, I'm trying to get my computer in the right place. It looks like possibly what's on the computer dashboard is different than what is on our executive report. Specifically, the percentage objective is listed as 0%, and that very well could be why it's not articulated a correct completion percentage. So it could just very well be a technology issue.
Well, and again, it's not put in the completed percentage until that tactic is 100% complete.
Correct, but Madam Mayor, I think if you look at the percent objectives, they're listed as 0. So, whereas all the other ones are weighted, that particular one, for whatever reason, is weighted as 0. Again, I think it's probably a technology mistake or essentially a computer typo. Nothing to get upset over, just more getting that clarification as to where things are.
Okay, so I will go through each of these items and see if there's any need to vote on them. Council, any issues with 4A1, keeping it in? 4A2?
Yes.
Okay, so I will ask for a voice vote on 4A2. Those in favor of keeping it in, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. We will keep it in. 4A3. 4A4 has asked to note the change from community development to police. Any problem with that? 4A5 is changing the lead from mayor to police and changing to become the safest city in Idaho regardless of size, rather than what is currently stated. Any issues with that? Okay, we'll move to 4B. There are recommendations to this, to delete this as an objective.
Madam Mayor?
Ms.
The
Mylum.
reasoning for removing the entire.
That is can you pull up the notes on that, JC?
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, can you repeat that?
On 4B?
I'm not voting against health.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer?
I don't know if she's got notes on, but I want it removed. Now I'm hoping some staff do too. Part of the reason being is what is a health profile?
So I know there's been a lot of debate on this from our team and the role that the city plays in community health. Some of this was related, and I'm just going to give you the general discussion. I can't tell you what is in the notes, and we'll go to that. Maybe we should go to that before I give my summary.
Madam Mayor, I'll have to open up each one of these objectives because you can't make notes at the goal level.
Okay.
So I don't have, that's 4B2, 4B3. That's the notes on 4B3, which shows it's dependent on 4B2. And then
So I guess I would go to the health profile is something that has been, the conversation has been driven by United Way and a community's health profile and what your demographics and some of your cultural and physical assets of a community have to do with it. So in the creation of this area, it was thought that the healthy programming and physical structure of the park system and recreation programs, the heart-safe Meridian goal of increasing the survivability of heart events, Ann and I just went to a workshop on this that talked about some of the economic development benefits as well. But the premise of the health profile is what role would the city play in participating in the conversations as well as programming to be a stakeholder to having a healthier population. And that would encompass that healthy, premier healthy community aspect. And admittedly, this area, because there has been some concern expressed, has kind of been one of those areas, do we put time and effort into developing tactics if the council doesn't support it?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner.
I appreciate your comments and the feedback from staff. I have struggled with this one. I think I initially was very supportive of removing 1 through 4. And I guess for me, where the crux is if this is a city strategic plan, meaning led by City Hall, then yes, I support removing 1 through 4. If this is a community-wide strategic plan, we're engaging stakeholders, which I would hope one day that's where our plan would be, then I would support including those, because I think that there is a huge opportunity for us to be a catalyst for what goes on in our community and to be the leader on that. I've never been able to wrap my head around if this is City of Meridian strategic plan or Meridian's strategic plan, if that makes sense. So I'm still supportive of removing them at this point, but I think as we've talked ad nauseum, this is a living document. I would not be opposed at a later point in time reintroducing something similar that is more encompassing of community health.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Milam.
I would like to leave them in and maybe just change the priority to low until they figure it out and let them work on it like they were going to and give us a report back and see what they come up with what they were giving.
I think that there are several objectives in the strategic plan that are the city interacting with stakeholders. And not all of it can be driven by the city, but the city can be the convener of the discussion. I would make a suggestion to follow. I would make a suggestion to change these to low, and we'll bring a specific update in October as to a recommendation on if we feel there is a continued role. In the interim, I think it would be helpful to have Kendra Whit Doyle from Blue Cross Foundation to come and do her presentation to council in terms of what is Meridian's health profile and the role that the city can play in a healthier community, which has a number of benefits, both in the population base and in economic vitality. So if you have an interest in changing those to low, bringing Kendra in to do a presentation and then make some decisions after having more information, we can work it that way.
Madam Mayor?
Mr.
In
Borton.
that regard, for that future discussion, the concern I had with 4B 1 through 5 series is the massive obligation on the fire chief to try and implement all of these, which I think's outside true core mission of his role. So there might be a way to compress the healthy focus into focus area number 5, perhaps, not tonight, but which speaks to recreation. It also has an economic development component to it, so focus area 2 perhaps, but nonetheless, the 4B 1 through 5 seem to be a massive broad brush that might exceed the scope of our proper role and clearly the role of a fire chief.
Well, and certainly I would agree that you can develop in the tactics some of the things that would support 4B5, again, with low priority. I'm not sure if the fire department is the correct lead on that, but that is also something that we can bring back for further discussion. So the council seems to be in agreement to remove 4B1 through 4B4 and keep 4B5.
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Mylum?
I thought we were just keeping all of them and moving to a low priority for now.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Palmer?
I think to all the points to remove, especially Councilman Borton's, it makes sense to remove it, and then if we have somebody try, come or somebody develop a new, better version to be put back in, rather than just move it to low, to then incentivize staff and whoever to find a reason to convince us to sell us, have somebody come present to us to sell us on why we should re-elevate it. I think we need to remove it and have somebody convince us why it should be in at all.
Well, so I'll go through line by line. But and when we get to 4B5, I would suggest not changing the lead from mayor to fire. Keep it at mayor. And that will be a report back in October, after you get a presentation by Blue Cross. Okay, 4B1 to remain in.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, I'm fine, I'm going to vote to keep them all in.
Me too.
Okay.
With the understanding that nothing's going to happen. They're just going to sit there dormant until October. If they're moved to low, the chief's not going to do anything. So we can keep them in. It's that October discussion after there's a presentation. Just my preliminary thought is they're probably going to come out in October and maybe be refocused and placed elsewhere.
Redone.
Madam Mayor? I'm going to vote to keep them all in, though I don't know that fire is the right department to be in charge of this. So I would vote to move it somewhere else.
Why don't you keep it as is, and we will bring recommendations in October.
Who to do it and where to put it.
Right.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner?
just, I guess procedural then. Again, in the executive report, I think, again, just maybe a digital glitch, the percentage of objectives are all listed as 0 through, I think, 4B1, 2, 3, and 4. So maybe just make sure those objectives are weighted. To me, to the comment about who's the lead, I think mayor and staff can determine who the appropriate lead is, and I think we can support them in that, but just making sure that the objective percentages are accurate.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer?
and I'm probably alone in this, but I hate leaving something in the strategic plan that we're gonna purposely say, we're gonna put this in here, but don't do anything. Not until we have a chance to talk about it again. Given how long it takes us to get to where we are today and actually having a conversation on individual things like this, I think it's best just to take it out. And then that way there's no chance of somebody worrying about it, and it's just out of the way until a better one is put back in.
What,
If it's not in the plan, it's not in the plan.
Isn't
I will say that we will bring specifics to you in October.
It was,
right around.
okay.
So I'm hearing keep 5B in its entirety.
Madam
and
Mayor,
report back.
it
Yes.
sounds like Councilman Palmer wants a vote. Let's give him a vote.
Okay, for B1, those in favor of keeping it, say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. For B2, those in favor of keeping it in, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, those opposed?
No.
For B3, those in favor of keeping it in,
Aye.
those opposed?
No.
For B4, those in favor of keeping it in,
Aye.
Aye.
and those opposed?
No.
For B5, those in favor of keeping it in,
Aye.
those opposed? Okay. For C,
No, go either way.
One vote
yes.
for B5.
Uh-huh.
Well, what did I?
Keep it in?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
4C, you have one area that was to delete 4C4. Any discussions outside of that?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Mylum.
what, now I don't have the, oh, is it, did JC open it? The tactics? Trying to figure out why they want to take it out. Sounds like something we need.
Well, I think that it's also something that came through a United Way program. We didn't see, in looking at it further, the role that the city could play in this, other than what our senior advisory board has already done in working with the CDBG funds to develop a service manual for our senior community, and what we've done in the utility billing with the community services. That's really programmatic instead of strategic. So, any items before that one that would like discussion? And I think some of this is driven by our CDBG as well. Okay, if there's nothing before 4C4, I would ask those in favor of the recommendation to remove 4C4, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, can I get, those in favor of removing 4C4, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so there's another tie. Okay?
How you round up?
Tie breaks the tie?
4D1 and 4D2, any issues there? Any issues in 4E?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Palmer?
Madam Mayor, I would beg that we not, going to the tactic, the first one there. So many reasons. Write a scope of work and hire a consultant, another consultant, to help research building codes and other information related to green building designs, practices, and materials that improve indoor air quality and overall health. Scope of service to include inventory, blah, 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 blah. Anything that we do along the lines of changing code to make things more restrictive is going to increase the cost of building in Meridian. We don't need to increase the cost of building in Meridian. Our code is sufficient, if not overbearing as it is in some areas, and we don't need to go down this road.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd?
I agree wholeheartedly with Councilman Palmer, except in one area. Anytime you get to the ADA or the life safety, then you have to really look hard at the codes. These codes are pretty well taken care of by the state. Why would we want to make our codes any different than what everybody else in the valley is having, unless it does pertain to life safety or ADA?
I don't know the specific conversation surrounding this objective, other than at one time the city did have Idaho Power funds that they incentivized businesses that were focused on sustainable products to help those emerging entrepreneurs. And the council at the time, also in building a LEED certified building, was interested in what we could do to at least make it known that sustainable building was welcome and encouraged in Meridian. I think that's as far as they went. So I'm not sure what all is behind this.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd?
and I don't disagree with what you just stated, except the fact is let's let the builder decide if he wants to build a Gold Star house. Let's make sure that we have the right codes enforced, that the house is safe, and it's done that. But if somebody wants to build a greenhouse, let them build it. We don't have to come in and say everybody's going to build it, a greenhouse. And I think this is exactly what's being looked at. It says right up there, green building designs.
Well, and as you can see from the tactics, this is something that is a low priority. It's that they're not focused on even considering it, and you would see any kind of budget request, not in this budget year, but the following budget year. So this is something that certainly can be talked about from the building department on the whys. If you want to keep it on, they can report back.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Palmer?
Madam Mayor, and regardless of the priority, if it's staying in the strategic plan, we're asking staff to put some action to it, whether, even if that's as low as researching options to then present to us. If that's what the council wants, then so be it. This councilman doesn't want staff bothering with it. If somebody wants to move to Meridian and build themselves a greenhouse, like Councilman Byrd said, they're welcome to do it. Idaho Power, that you had mentioned, Madam Mayor, is a private company, regulated by government, but is still a private company. And they're welcome to give any kind of incentives they want because they're not using tax dollars. Any kind of incentive that we give means that we're gonna have to charge somebody else more if we give them a discount because, hey, you did something green. And so if somebody wants to do that and pay extra for themselves, so be it, like Councilman Byrd said, but I don't think it's something that we need to ask staff to put any time into coming up with proposals, whatever priority it may be.
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Mylum?
Well, I'm looking at the objective. And the objectives make sense. And it doesn't say anything about changing regulations or building codes. It says promote community-based programs, promote green building designs, develop sustained initiatives, recycling and energy efficiency. It doesn't say we're going to mandate that every building in the city be made with ecosystems. It says, well, we will promote it and we will, be involved with the community and help advance that and recycling and the whole thing that's going to make our city last longer and our earth last for your children and their children.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Palmer?
Madam Mayor, and if I may, Councilman Mylum, this is exactly why I was so adamant about us getting the tactics, because the tactics are the definition of the objective. The objective's too broad. That was my whole concern, is that we had a one page that looked great. All these objectives look fantastic, but without the objectives, what the meaning behind them is, we didn't know what it was. And so you have to look at the objectives, because that's what's telling you what the plan is. And yes, it's not, we're gonna mandate everybody build to a green standard, but it's that we're going to encourage green building by saying, hey, we might incentivize you. We might come up with a program. Tactic 6, develop a plan to publicize the city's final green building program to appropriate groups because of incentives. Incentives when it comes to government and tax dollars means that somebody else has to pay more because you didn't get the incentive.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner?
I have to echo some of Councilmember Palmer's comments, specifically my appreciation for sending the tactics, because when you look at Objective 4E3 versus 4E1, they read somewhat similar at the objective level. It talks about promotion, and to me, I take that oftentimes as promotion, advertising, community, relationships, et cetera. It is when you get into the tactics that I start to be concerned about, to a lot of the elements that Councilmember Palmer spoke about. From a conceptual basis, I think the reasons why Councilman Mylum supports it, I share. But I do think that it's not our role to determine who we're going to incentivize for a philosophical belief at the expense of what private business wants to do. So I would support removing it.
Okay, well, those in favor of keeping 4E1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those who would like to, and those opposed?
No.
Nay.
Okay.
Did Councilmember Borton vote to remove something?
Okay,
You might not do it again.
remove. 4E2, those in favor of retaining, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
I'm an A also.
You're a nay?
That's a tie.
Okay. 4E3, those in favor of retaining, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
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 Tie.
Mr. Borton, what was your vote?
Nay.
Okay. Okay, item 5. There was considerable discussion on this, I think, in an attempt to get more clarification. So 5A1 was to first request from community development, changing from high to medium. And I would imagine then the dates would change accordingly. And that might even center around the auditorium district. And this is a community partnership thing. So any discussion on that? Any opposition to change that from high to low? And we'll bring back date changes too. Okay, hearing none.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer.
if I could just ask a question. On tactic 6, it says assist others, Arts Foundation, MDC, with site selection and acquisition. When it says and acquisition, is that saying that we want to promote a possible opportunity where the city could purchase? Or is there assist in acquisition some other way?
I think it's not saying either of those. It's saying anything would have to be brought back to council. So I don't know.
Madam Mayor, I could possibly answer that. So yeah, that acquisition could be purchasing ground, but also, for example, the traffic boxes is a good example. We had to go get an agreement with ACHD to be able to use those as a medium for that. So we helped acquire the ability to put it there, but we don't own any of them. We just own the art, not the box. So I think the mayor's right. The acquire could take a variety of different forms, all of which end up coming back to you, either in a form of an agreement or if it was an actual purchase of ground to put something on. So any of them would come back in front of you.
If there's no issue in changing that, well, those in favor of changing that from high to medium, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, 5A2 was the discussion that Steve brought to clarify what the desire was. He suggested the changing from sports facilities to public sports facilities to bring better clarity to that. And he is also suggesting that it is combined with 5A4. I don't know why.
Madam Mayor? I don't know why,
Silent.
I'm sorry, I don't know why we need more clarity. Could be any sports facility. Like our,
I guess in his discussion, he didn't want to lead the effort to get the Boise Hawks here. He thought it was beyond his bandwidth. So the way he interpreted it when the strategic objective was developed was he was focused on public sports facilities. And then there was questions regarding, well, are you going to be leading the efforts to attract a major team or a minor team? And so he felt that clarification was needed. So he could clearly develop tactics to the objective as he understood it.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Lil Roberts.
I think what Steve was getting at in combining 5A2 is in strategic 1 and 5A4 because they're both referring to the South Meridian Regional Park and the Discovery theme.
I'm not sure, because I don't read that objective as specific to South Meridian, but it would be to define in his tactics, which, is all around South Meridian. So it's not clear in the objective. In the Parks Master Plan, it was public sports facilities citywide, not specific to South Meridian, but I see in the tactics, it is specific to South Meridian.
Madam Mayor.
Who said that?
Me, sorry.
I don't know if it's Neri,
I-
Mr. Neri or Mr. Kavner.
I'm having a
so-
hard time,
Mr. Kavner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In that case, I would support leaving them separate. That's something that we could always combine in October, where it sounds like maybe there'd be an opportunity for more information to be shared.
Okay. Yeah, because it does look like on the executive report, that does read different than it does on our summary, the objective. So we will bring that back and keep it as is on your objective summary sheet. Is everyone in agreement with that? Sure. Okay. With the change of adding public,
Yep.
yes? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, 5A3. Any issues there?
Madam Mayor,
Yes. Mr. Palmer.
even more than the farm issue, we're down to just the last 5% that's being tactic 4. Create a report with identified tools and needed step from implementation of debt mechanisms for financing recreation and entertainment facilities. I wish it wasn't even started, but given that there's the only thing left to do is to report it, I would hope that we would tell Mr. Lavoy to throw away any research he has, put it in the shredder, and we all move on with never, ever talking about debt, especially for non-life safety issues.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner.
JC, do you have any data that you can share on tactic number 4? I'm just curious how close to Mr. Lavoy is to completing a report.
5A3?
583, sorry, is that
Okay.
one we're on, I believe?
I think he is just 95% complete.
With the report?
Yes.
And Madam Mayor, I can appreciate Councilmember Palmer wanting to have a protest vote on this issue, but considerable work has been put in by staff, and to say we don't want to receive the report that outlines the work that's been done, to me seems a little short-sighted. So I appreciate where Councilmember Palmer's coming from philosophically, but to remove this when it's that close to being completed, and all we need is a printed version of the report is not a wise decision, in my opinion.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Palmer.
And by all means, let's get the report and let's please not implement it.
Okay. So 5A4 is a recommendation to, again, combine with 5A2. This objective is specific to the concepts that are being considered for our South Meridian Park. And what's the thought there? Do you want to keep that in and just have it reported back to? Certainly, you see the progression with much of the activity that's already going on. Okay, we'll keep that in unless
Madam
I,
Mayor. Just again, just procedural, the objective percentages on the executive report aren't articulated correctly. Again, I don't know if it's the software tool, just as we track things, I want to make sure that we're recognizing the success that are happening in each department.
okay, thank you. Okay, 5B. This is something that was discussed in February about what does this mean? Does it mean that making something stronger? Does it mean going out and attracting new events? And staff was seeking greater clarity on what specifically this was entitled or intended to be. And they're suggesting ways to support existing events and make them stronger.
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Lowe Roberts.
I think that Colin summarized it really well when he said, after our discussion, he said, "It's my understanding that we work on strengthening the existing events, especially the holiday parade, Christmas parade, and keep our ears open for anything else that would be appropriate for our city."
So perhaps in looking at that objective, determine, attract, retain signature events for our city.
Enhance, retain.
Enhance.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum.
I agree, and it says we should find ways to help and support their efforts to grow. I mean, we already are doing that. I don't know, I'm not really sure what else we need to do, or we want to.
You could delete this.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Holman.
my notes indicate on this one, you see on the screen here, the objectives were not weighted because on the March 21st meeting, this was one that council actually did agree to delete at that meeting. So Parks didn't move forward with doing anything with this. They've updated all their stuff, done a great job, but this one they didn't do anything on because it was agreed to be deleted.
Good, so we're not wasting their time.
Okay. Still agree? We will mark that from low to remove. The 5B2 has been accomplished, and the suggestion is to mark it as complete. Any opposition to that? Okay. Okay, 5B3. Any issues? Next one that has marked is 5C1. Just changing the leads in this section.
Nope, sounds good.
Okay, anything, we did have a tie vote in 1C3, 2B2, 4C4, 4E2, and 4E3.
That many ties?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, before we jump back into the ties, I guess, and maybe this, I wasn't paying attention, but 3D4,
3B4,
3 is before 5.
3B4.
3D is in David,
3D,
3 David
Okay.
4.
yes.
I don't recall that we, and maybe you called for this, and I was looking ahead. This is one that I think needs to be removed. I don't think that at this point in time, our city needs to evaluate the need for a centralized professional administrative.
Okay, no, wait, I'm on the wrong one. It's not 3D,
4?
3D4.
3D4.
3 David 4.
Okay,
Again, maybe I'm alone in this. I just see this as something that is not needed for our city. I think our current operational structure works really well, as we've seen tonight, and I would support removing this one.
Okay. Council, I would ask those in favor of retaining 3D4 to vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay.
Nay.
Okay? That changes from medium to remove. Okay.
Madam Mayor, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Mr. Kavner.
Would you be willing to grant us a 5-minute recess before we jump into the ties?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I didn't notice the time. No, I really want to make you suffer until you can break a tie.
Take away the water. Should we vote on it? We're smart to stand. I didn't see it. Oh, I didn't see it.
After an hour,
Right.
no one ever told me.
Oh,
That's why they left. They said, you guys choose to stay or walk.
You were checking why they were here?
Dale was here. Yeah.
right. No, I didn't want to debate each objective. It's just, do you want it or not?
November, December, with Charlie and I had plenty of discussions about this. I wasn't in favor of it. We do. It would be a good thing going forward. Yeah. Deal with everything.
Push-ups in.
I don't typically happen. Sure. Genesis, holy cow.
Huh?
You even doing like a man.
Their entire company, the policies
Hey, I'll bet you Joe, I'll bet you Joe can do one more than you can.
Oh,
Yeah, even Dodds. He was late for a meeting with us.
Hey, Jennifer.
did he
bet you
get
Joe
down
can
and,
do one more.
did he drop down and do 5?
How many did you do?
I said, one, promotes fitness, discipline, and it humbles you. Get down in front of a room and do push-ups.
Wow.
And you don't want to be late. Especially if you can't do push-ups.
We used to do this all the time.
Well, I guess you learn how.
Yeah, you learn.
When we were younger, Milt Atkinson was, what?
And the really good
13,
ones,
14
they're
years older
always
than I
late.
was. I was in my 20s, he was in his 30s. One noon hour, we sitting there and he said something. At that time, was pretty good shape, you know. I got down and did 50 and he said, I can do one more than you can. You know what? That old little fat guy did.
Really?
He did 51 of them.
Oh, I was feeling like it, my arms needed to go. I just did like 20.
Pretty good.
Can you do 21, Joe?
My boys too, did all of them. I think in 1917, we got push-ups.
Oh, man.
Oh, gosh.
They're knuckleheads.
If it was a contest, I probably could have done a few more, but I couldn't have done that many more. In one.
I would hurt myself trying.
So yeah, it's better not to do it. I just was feeling like, it was weird, I was sitting there, I was feeling like, my arms were just killing me. I wanted to, like, I started to, I was kind of like leaning like this, I was like, I wanted to just start leaning on that.
We've been working on that for years.
I could do a treadmill right now.
That'd be good.
I'd walk for 2 hours straight.
You and Ty and Luke were to
And then
remove
we're just
it.
in this 100,000 thing.
We've been expending, we've done consultants, we're in the middle of,
The only thing I'm not in favor of,
I'll bring it in.
Me too, I was that.
if we're gonna subsidize something
But
like
it is kind of sectioning up for us.
subsidize the farmer that's there.
but you're voting on a
I would walk,
tactic,
I would
not
much rather
an
walk for 3
objective.
hours than sit for 3 hours.
I'll vote.
Okay, well, at least we know we get that one. And the promote a cultural workforce diversity. We should be training on that. That's
I haven't been doing my work.
I crimp once you do training, cause how much they charge
I've
for
been
them to
walking
train.
and stuff,
okay,
but
but if we had some of that, like respecting women in the workforce, would we be doing what we're doing after this?
only sometimes.
So that's all
Only when I move
inclusive.
a certain way. That's why I'm not working.
I just,
It's kind of
It's not. Yeah, but they don't. And you have to remind people. And what? No one told me I had to do that.
You need to
What?
prove your work.
Crap.
That's the worst fortune cookie I've ever got. Are these yours?
And did you vote against sustainable initiatives and water conservation?
Where, how much?
recycling?
Yeah, that's what my husband buys me, but he.
Vote
I like
against this,
better.
this is all SWAC.
Mine are like that,
So
like
this
fishing.
is SWAC, this is our,
Those are a little
our
light. I like these better 'cause they're
water,
thinner.
and
Though actually,
both
I
of
can't
those.
stand,
Oh, that was
I can't just put them on.
Joe
It takes two
and.
hands to put them on.
Because they're too thin.
Yeah, because they're super flimsy.
We have
I've got a package trade you for a pair I got in the car.
Micro bend, which is nice, but you can't. Try putting it on one hand. Well,
You know,
okay, skinny head.
I actually,
I have a little
as
head.
much as
That's
I-
why sunglasses are so
I
hard for
think-
me.
Oh, my God. I think this was good. It was needed. And now a vote is made, everyone moves forward. We get updates. If you have issues then, you know, this is.
There looks like one of them.
They were the cheapest polarized ones that were.
I went back and checked, which means I missed.
I know, but, you know, you have an excuse to say, come on, guys, let's just ask the same thing and let's get an update in October and,
But I didn't go back and change.
I didn't look at the mirror. It looked like it was.
If I was working on it, I did that, like in mine.
They cover like.
A couple in there that are 60, and we actually.
We tried big glasses, it literally covered.
That's when you just get aviators because they're meant to.
okay, Dean and CJ are here, we can start.
Poor Dean.
It's a 58-page document. Right.
Jumping jacks. Come on, everybody.
I had it easy.
Jumping jacks, push-ups, oh.
The hardest one is
How did I get a bunch of
scissor kicks.
Those aren't Kit Kats, ooh,
Oh,
are
they're
those?
$100,000. Oh, well, there's a few Kit Kats in there. You want the $100,000?
Oh, no, I want that one. Okay,
Wow. Singular.
That's why we need to have healthy cities.
let's call this meeting back to order. Okay, council, there were several areas that we had a tie. And I know every time I say that, you think I'm calling your name. So the first area was 1C3, which was regarding primarily the Fields District. So any discussion before I ask for another vote?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Palmer.
Maybe as another thought is this is also one that could be added back in when there's a more precise purpose to it. That might help break the tie.
Mayor.
Ms. Mylum.
Or we could leave it in and take it out if there's ever a real reason to take it out.
Well, and there is, of many of the objectives, has more data behind it, studies we've spent money on, and actually would benefit the council to have that update. And I do have a note here to have Bruce bring an update of where the working groups are on this. But I guess I'll just ask those in favor of keeping 1C3, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the ayes have it. The next one is 4C4.
4C4?
4C4. Employee programs and services that address social and support service deficiencies. It is recommended to remove. Any discussion before I ask for a vote? Okay. Those in favor of keeping it, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Hey,
Okay, the nays have it. This goes from low to remove. 4E2. You know, just to point out that we do look for new and new programs to look at water conservation, energy efficiencies in our wastewater treatment plant. We have a commission specifically focused on recycling.
Community Recycling Fund.
Yeah, so this is one of those areas that is an important aspect for the city. But any further discussion before a vote is called for?
Madam Mayor,
Mr.
I'm going
Borton.
to be voting to support keeping it in, but I've got concern with tactic 1 and 2 and the use of a consultant to drive all of its completion, so understanding
Yeah, me too.
the
Okay.
objective may be worthwhile, the manner in which it's accomplished, there could be future concern, but
Okay, thank you for that.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
and before a consultant would be hired, it would become before the council, and at that time, you can turn it down. And I agree wholeheartedly with you, Councilman Borton, that that was a sticking point for me, but, and I got to thinking that you'll get the final vote whether you have a consultant or not.
Okay, so those in favor of keeping 4E2, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Oh,
Okay. And then 4E3, any discussion? This was requested to change from medium to low.
sounds good.
Those in favor of keeping this objective and changing it from medium to low, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, so that changes from medium to low. Those were the areas that I
Mayor?
saw.
Madam Mayor, we had one more.
I'm sorry, which one?
2B2.
Oh, 2B2, sorry. I have that too. Hold on. Okay, the last one is 2B2, and the promote cultural and workforce diversity. That is listed as a low, but it does have relevance to ongoing programming. So any discussion on this?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer?
this is last argument for a tie break. I just want to say, let the free market be free. And certainly, crystals, I think should be free to, look into and promote it. But I just don't want it in the strategic plan as a thing that we're making a big push on.
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Lowe Roberts?
Because we don't have a statement as the city regarding the community, any recommendations there, this is all we've got when somebody is looking at Meridian and says, do you have any type of diversity plan citywide? That's it.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner?
if that's the case, I would encourage our city to make a statement on diversity in our community. I would hope that we would do that in the relatively near future.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
We've taken care of it within the city, which we control within our employees and stuff. And I just have a hard time going out and tell other businessmen and stuff and companies what they can and can't do. I think the public takes care of that well enough. And so I'm like Councilman Palmer. I don't see why we're really, since we got the city's policy in place, I don't see why we're spending any more time and money on this.
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Mylum.
So, Councilmember, you don't think that our employees should have training on diversity as part of their ongoing training? That's what this is about. That's what a lot of this is about.
Madam Mayor, Mrs. Mylum, it is about training, but I think we already have the training. I know ICRIMP promotes having training, but I think they get about $35 per participant, so it's beneficial for them to do it. I don't have any problem with doing a little bit of training, but I think we've got people in places in the city of Meridian that will make sure that the diversity situation is taken care of from the city standpoint.
Any further discussion from council?
Now, Madam Mayor, I think it has to stay in. The argument may lie in the means and mechanism in which a local government promotes that portion of its strategic plan, but I don't think anyone up here, I don't hear any comment about being opposed to supporting and promoting cultural and workforce diversity. If anything, I hear the debate being, what steps, how far does local government go in promoting that cause? Supporting it internally with its internal staff, training employees, police, fire, first responders, and the remainder of our employees to be aware of it. And then also to encourage our community as well. So I think it's a really important part to include in our strategic plan. I'd be shocked to have it come out.
But I would be embarrassed.
I wrote it down when I heard the debate. The last phrase of his name escapes me, the Methodist minister, the often cited quote, and the last phrase of it being, "Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." So we can sit up here as groups that might not be subject to discrimination, or might not have a firsthand account of what it means. I don't think it lessens the importance of keeping this type of focus within a strategic plan. At least to me, it's that important to keep in.
Okay. Those in favor of keeping 2B2 in the strategic plan, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Wow. Mr. Neri, in an adopted plan, again, you guys made me break a tie last week, which was really fun. But I will say, in this, I do think I will maintain my practice. I don't think I should be breaking a tie on policy. If there is a tie, it remains as is.
If there's a tie, then the motion to leave it in would fail, but the way you've handled all the other ones tonight has really been on up or down, in or out.
Yeah, but
So-
I haven't done everything up and down. I got to does anyone have an issue
Sure, no, I agree with
So-
that. So there really is nothing in the code that would answer your question on whether or not, other than you're not obligated to vote under the code.
Madam Mayor?
If you don't vote, then nothing would change in theory, because it wouldn't pass. Right.
Mr. Palmer.
In this kind of situation, we don't know what we're asking you to do. We're split on what we want you to implement. And so I feel like this is a little bit different than the situation where, you took the opportunity to not vote and gave us opportunity to discuss it more. I, for one, would love to know what you want, whether it's a situation that you want to have the staff that you oversee be implementing this or not.
I would agree with much of what Ann has said in terms of what our business community is looking for in terms of economic development and what a couple of employers have expressed. And in the message that to both internally and externally that we embrace diversity, we celebrate it, and that we need to express that through our actions. It has to be more than words.
I support your decision.
Okay?
Leave it
Anything further?
Doesn't need to be said.
Leave it in, let's go.
Okay, and certainly we will make sure that this is one of those items in the update that has extra focus on. Okay, next steps, we've gotten through this. We will bring a cleaned up plan next week on the 5th and ask for an official adoption.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
can you give us some clarification as to what it is we are going to be adopting, specifically related to the larger question about dates? Do the newly proposed but previously unadopted dates become the newly adopted dates? Or, I just want to make sure that I have a good idea as to what we're going to be asked to adopt next week.
We will, where there is an original start and end date that are in conflict, we will get those cleaned up. And have the leads do one final look-through in those specific areas. And where there is a change, it will be noted in the conversation before you take action. But otherwise, it will be as discussed and changed tonight.
Madam Mayor?
Ms.
Question for
Holman.
clarification. In the past, this is what we have adopted with the resolution. It's the plan that just lists focus areas, goals, and objectives. So am I to understand we're going to add priority and date ranges to what council is adopting? Because that's what we tie to the resolution that we pass. So that's a question.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Neri.
could I just add one thing, I guess, from a department director standpoint? I guess the conflict I keep hearing and have concern with, and I don't have very many, so it's not as big an issue for me as it might be for others, is if the document is supposed to be fluid and we are supposed to have priority on how when we're doing this, but I had always been under the impression that these annual or these semi-annual updates would be the opportunity to say, yeah, we really were ambitious on this, but really we got this bogged down on this one, and we had trouble doing this, so we're going to need to push these dates a little bit. So if you make them hard and fast and tie them to a resolution, and now it doesn't feel very fluid anymore, now it feels like I totally got to get this done by September 30th, or I'm in trouble. I think you're going to, more likely than not, get a lot of the directors to say, I'm going to push the date out a little further then, because I can't guarantee, like we started it when we put this together and gave this to you in January of 16. Again, those were guesses that as we developed it, and we were super ambitious and realized that was really poor on our part. And that's why some of the dates are fluid. So I'd really just ask you to think about how important the dates are, other than how far is the progress. You know, the date may or may not be as critical as that it's your semi-annual updates as well as the department updates you get monthly. You have some ability to ask about progress. You know, if we aren't very far, like Councilman Cavanaugh's raised, well, why is that? You know, is it not a priority? Is there resource issues? Is there something else? But I'm just concerned that if you tie those dates to that, you're more likely at the next workshop, they're going to ask you to move all those dates out even further because, again, amongst all the things that people do on a daily basis, this is just one of them. This isn't the only one.
The strategic plan, this document needs to be updated to what we did tonight. And this document, the objective summary, should be as current as we can provide to council. So they do have a better view on it. This, though, this document has to be changed and to reflect the changes that we went through tonight. So this is the document that you adopted and is looking to be adopted as amended tonight. And this objective summary is what we will bring back as well to the current thoughts. And anything that changes in the original start or end date will be noted if those are changed. But we already went through any specifics that I could give you tonight.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
our request then is that when that document is sent to us for all of those date changes, to
Have a date at the bottom,
so we're not going to,
footnote.
sure, on the footnote, a explanation as to why those dates are changed.
Then we're not done going through this?
Madam Mayor, I guess I've asked this question multiple times. You aren't able to answer it tonight, and I'm fine with that. I would just like those questions answered before I'm asked to adopt it. And again, if I'm the only one that feels that way, I'm okay with that. I don't want to be a roadblock, but I'm not going to adopt something that we don't have all the questions answered.
Well, then, but you're not adopting this. You're adopting this. And this does not have those dates.
Madam Mayor, you just said that the other document will be updated to incorporate what we discussed here tonight.
It needs to be, yes.
Great.
Madam Mayor, I thought we already
Yes,
adopted
madam.
that.
This? Well,
Everything
yeah,
has to be,
but as amended,
Okay, Madam
Um,
Mayor,
yes.
to clarify, because now I'm confused, so I apologize for belaboring the point. So I'm updating this, and I'm bringing this back. We're updating the objective summary with the decisions that were made tonight and bringing that back. Are both documents going to be tied to a resolution for adoption by council,
No.
or only this one?
Only this one.
Okay.
That's all that has been done. But this should be updated to the changes that we noted today as well.
Yes, and that is just changes to the title of the objectives, because tactics are not in this, so it's only if we've changed the verbiage on objectives, correct?
That's correct. And then any dates in the original start and end that was an error because of what you had mentioned, the tactics influenced, those need to be cleaned up, but that doesn't influence this.
Okay, Madam Mayor, follow up? The tactics were, there's some that obviously they were not updated, but if we want directors to go back into every single tactic and justify.
No, it just
justify
where
the date,
it
that will
was,
take a while.
it was, the original start date and end date were the same.
Okay.
And I thought you had noted that could have been influenced by the tactics.
Yes, it means they hadn't put dates around tactics, yes.
Okay. The biggest cleanup is what action that we took tonight in cleaning up the objectives, the priority, and whether it was removed, complete. I don't think we did any ongoing, but those changes.
Okay.
Okay. But are we all in agreement, we're voting on this? This, that you all voted on last time? Okay. Yes? Okay, thank you. Just wanted to verify that. Okay, item 13, executive session.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we go into executive session as per Idaho State Code 74206F.
Second.
Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh?
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer? Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Borton?
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd?
Aye.
A lot of sausage.
It's gonna taste fantastic in the end, though. It's just gonna have a little bit of like
Bitter?
nails in it.
Just bitter.